Have you ever felt that you are not alone in your Minecraft world? In the silent halls of an abandoned mine or the eerie stillness of a foggy forest, many players have reported a chilling sight. A lone figure at the edge of render distance, white eyes glowing from the darkness. That figure is Herobrine, the ghostly legend who has haunted Minecraft's community for over a decade. Who is Herobrine, really? Is he a vengeful spirit, a glitch in the code, a figment of our imagination, or something far more mysterious? This is the enigma that keeps fans obsessed and coming back for more. Herobrine's mystery. From the earliest days of Minecraft, the tale of Herobrine has been told in whispers among players. What began as a single eerie screenshot and story in 2010 ignited a wildfire of speculation. A player on the forums claimed to see Herobrine and had their post mysteriously deleted, and a streamer staged a fake encounter that left thousands spooked. In those early days, fact and fiction blurred as the community breathlessly traded tales. Officially, the game's developers insist he has never existed in the game's code. In fact, Mojang began inserting the tongue-in-cheek patch note, "Removed Herobrine," in update after update, a wink to the community acknowledging the legend. Yet, despite these assurances, millions of players swear they've seen him. They share stories of seeing someone who isn't supposed to be there. A ghost player with empty white eyes who stalks them from afar, leaves strange structures in the world, and vanishes before they can get a closer look. The mystery of Herobrine isn't just a game of hide and seek, it's become a modern myth. Herobrine's classic form identical to the default Minecraft character, Steve, but with ghostly white eyes. This simple, unimposing appearance is exactly what makes him so eerie. It's like looking at an empty-eyed version of the player. Seeing this figure in the distance, as many players have claimed to, is enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. The obsession. Why do so many hold on to the belief in Herobrine? Perhaps it's the primal thrill of the unknown. Minecraft can be a lonely game, just you against an endless world. The idea that something else might be out there in the darkness is both terrifying and thrilling. Herobrine embodies that feeling, the ancient evil hidden in plain sight, the watcher in the shadows. He is a blank canvas for our fears and curiosities. Over the years, fans have crafted elaborate theories to explain Herobrine's existence, each more mind-bending than the last. These theories range from quirky and imaginative to downright chilling and deeply tragic. What lies ahead? In this exploration, we will delve into the most fascinating Herobrine lore and fan theories that challenge everything we think we know about this infamous character. We'll consider possibilities that will make you question your own perceptions. What if he's all in our head? Journey through dark digital folklore. Could Herobrine be a virus lurking in the code? And wander into the realm of ghosts and demons? Is he the restless spirit of a lost miner, or an ancient evil from Minecraft's earliest days? We'll even confront theories that turn the entire story upside down, suggesting Herobrine might be a misunderstood guardian, or even a twisted reflection of the player themselves. Prepare yourself for a documentary-style deep dive into Herobrine's mythic saga. Each theory we uncover will be backed by in-game clues, fan-created lore, and the emotional threads that tie it all together: redemption, destiny, betrayal, and the enduring power of legend. By the end, you may not have a definitive answer to who or what Herobrine is, but you'll understand why this legend remains eternally captivating. The journey begins with a simple question. Could it all have been in our minds? What if it's all in your head? The hallucination theory. One of the most straightforward yet thought-provoking explanations for Herobrine is that he doesn't exist at all, at least not outside the human mind. According to this theory, every sighting of Herobrine is merely a hallucination caused by the player's own paranoia. Could it be that the real ghost haunting Minecraft is our imagination? Think about the atmosphere of Minecraft. You're alone in a vast, quiet world, mining in a deep cave or exploring a dark forest. The only sounds are your footsteps and the occasional eerie cave echo. Our brains are wired to find patterns and faces in randomness, a phenomenon known as pareidolia, especially in darkness. This trait is left over from ancient times, when noticing a lurking predator could mean life or death. In Minecraft's solitude, it's all too easy for the mind to play tricks. A flicker of a torch or an oddly placed block might suddenly look like a pair of white eyes in the distance. The longer you play alone, the more your mind fills the silence with its own stories. The paranoia feedback loop. The legend of Herobrine itself can seed these imaginings, creating a kind of mass hysteria or shared delusion. Once you've heard the creepy tales of a ghostly miner, every unexplained noise or weird occurrence in the game can set your heart pounding. Did that leaf just decay on its own? Or was it him? Was that a sheep on the hill or a human shape watching you? The more you worry, the more likely you are to see Herobrine's shadow where nothing exists. In other words, we create Herobrine by believing in him. There is even an eerie meta-story that circulated in the community playing on this idea. In one hoax, a hidden web page called Ghost in the Stream presented a scrambled message about victims of torture retreating into a fantasy world, unable to wake up. The message ominously implored the reader to wake up, implying that perhaps our entire Minecraft adventure, including Herobrine, could be a dream or illusion. While this was part of a staged scare and not an official story, it tapped into the same psychological terror. The idea that Herobrine's hauntings might actually be coming from inside the player's own mind. Evidence, or lack thereof. Supporters of the hallucination theory point to the complete lack of code or files referencing Herobrine in unmodded Minecraft. Not a single texture, sound, or line of code bears his name. If Herobrine isn't programmed into the game, then seeing him must mean something unusual is happening in the player's perception. It would also explain why screenshots and videos of Herobrine encounters are often grainy or inconclusive, much like photos of supposed real-world ghosts or Bigfoot. When you're scared and expecting to see a myth, your mind can fill in the blanks, and you might earnestly believe you saw Herobrine in the static of the fog. Emotional aftermath. If Herobrine is a creation of our own fear and loneliness, that in itself is a profound takeaway. It means the legend holds up a mirror to the player. Minecraft is a game about creativity and exploration, but also about isolation. The hallucination theory suggests that Herobrine is how the loneliness in the game talks back to us. It's the part of our brain that whispers, "What if you're not alone?" given a name and form. In a sense, Herobrine could be viewed as a kind of digital tulpa, a being brought to life by collective imagination. Millions of players believing in Herobrine almost will him into existence within their own minds, each sighting reinforcing the next. This theory reframes Herobrine not as an external threat, but as an internal one. The horror here isn't a ghost in the machine. It's the idea that our minds can conjure nightmares and impose them on reality. It's a quiet, psychological horror, a reminder that sometimes the scariest monster is the one your mind creates when left in the dark. Yet, as logical as the hallucination explanation might be, it's not enough for many. The stories and experiences players share can feel far too specific, too consistent to write off as mere imagination. Perhaps there is something more going on, if not a literal ghost, then maybe a digital phantom. Let's step away from psychology and into the circuits of the game itself. What if Herobrine lives not in our heads, but in the code? Ghost in the machine, the glitch or virus theory. Imagine for a moment that Herobrine isn't a spirit of a human at all, but a spirit of the game, a phantom born from bits and bytes. The glitch or virus theory proposes that Herobrine's legend began with a bug in the software or a malicious code injection that took on a life of its own. Could a game glitch manifest as a ghostly figure, shaping the world and terrifying players? This theory finds footing in the way Herobrine behaves. He's often said to manipulate the environment, digging tunnels, chopping leaves off trees, placing odd constructions, much like a rogue program might. Some have pointed out that in Minecraft's early days, there actually was an unused mob, non-player character, in the code, a human NPC that Notch was testing, which would simply walk around. That human mob was removed in alpha, but what if echoes of it remained, glitched into appearing as a white-eyed ghost? Notably, the first time Mojang added removed Herobrine to the patch notes in beta 1.6.6, it coincided with them stripping out the last remnants of the old human mob code. In other words, the developers themselves joked that removing a ghost code in the machine was like exorcising Herobrine. In a sense, Herobrine could be a digital zombie, a piece of code that wasn't fully deleted, wandering the world independently. The virus hypothesis. Another twist on this theory is that Herobrine was never an accident at all, but a virus planted by someone with an agenda. According to one popular creepypasta-style narrative, a disgruntled ex-Mojang employee, or a mysterious hacker, coded a virus into Minecraft known as Entity 303, intended to wreak havoc. While Entity 303 became its own separate legend, its story shows the community's willingness to believe that evil code could lurk in our games. Herobrine, some suggest, might be a similar virus, perhaps not designed to destroy Minecraft, but to haunt it. Under this scenario, every time Mojang writes removed Herobrine in the patch notes, it's a sly acknowledgement of an ongoing battle. The developers find the virus and scrub it out, but it keeps coming back. It's almost as if Herobrine is fighting to stay in the game, defying the creators themselves. If that sounds far-fetched, consider how intelligent Herobrine seems in stories. He reacts to players, even sending them messages or signs. A hallucination can't send a private message telling you, "Stop," but a hacker or an AI-driven virus could. In the original account, after the player's forum post about Herobrine was deleted, they received a one-word private email from the username Herobrine that said, "Stop." That implies communication through the system. A virus theory neatly fits this detail. Maybe some malicious code was deleting forum posts about it and sending warnings to keep itself secret. In-universe mechanics. Technically, a virus inside Minecraft could alter your game files or chat messages, though it would be a major security breach. There's no confirmed case of such a thing in Minecraft's history, but players have encountered world-breaking bugs and creepy glitches many times. Think of the infamous Farlands, the bizarre, distorted terrain at the edge of Minecraft's old world generation. One could imagine something like Herobrine, originating from those depths of glitchiness, a being from beyond the boundary of the world. Or recall times when multiplayer servers have bugged, showing ghost players online or entities that aren't really there. Could Herobrine be an amalgamation of such digital hiccups given a single frightening identity? Supporting evidence. Fans in favor of the glitch theory often cite the consistency of Herobrine's reported behaviors. Unlike a purely random hallucination, Herobrine sightings tend to include the same details: distant staring, disappearing, creations like perfect pyramids or tunnels, etc. It's almost like he's following a program. Early modders even embraced this idea. When the first Herobrine fan mod was made, it gave Herobrine exactly those abilities: to place weird structures, dig tunnels, stalk players, and even teleport behind them unexpectedly. The mod was mimicking the myth, but what if the myth was originally born from an actual glitch that did those things? Could a memory leak or a bug in terrain generation have caused those sand pyramids in oceans that players found, which then got attributed to Herobrine? Moreover, the virus theory touches on one of the most mythic themes in modern life: the idea of an AI or program becoming self-aware. It's a very Tron-like concept, a digital ghost with its own will. If Herobrine were a virus, over time the community has imbued him with a personality, cunning, malevolent, and playful in a dark way. We'd be talking about a rogue AI that enjoys scaring people, effectively a poltergeist living in the code. That's a chilling thought. A being with no physical form that can tamper with your game, your world, even your communications, all while you can't touch it. Emotional consequences. The glitch virus theory reframes Herobrine's story as man versus technology. It's no longer a ghost story, but a science fiction horror. If true, it paints Minecraft's world as not just a sandbox, but a haunted system. The emotional weight here comes from a sense of powerlessness and paranoia in a different flavor. Not fear of your own mind, but fear that the very technology you trust to relax and play might harbor something sinister. It's the dread of a friendly space, your cozy Minecraft world, being infected by an unseen menace. It also introduces the theme of manipulation. Herobrine, as a virus, is manipulating the game and, by extension, the player. He's toying with you for his own amusement or goals, like a puppeteer tugging strings from behind the screen. This theory challenges us to consider the boundaries of the game. We like to think we control our world in Minecraft, but if Herobrine is a virus, he is in control whenever he appears. It's the classic ghost in the machine scenario, the idea that something could be lurking in the technology that we don't fully understand. And when we think of it that way, Herobrine becomes not just a Minecraft legend, but a cautionary tale about the unpredictability of complex systems. It leaves us with an unsettling question. If a game as cheerful as Minecraft can have a dark side hidden in its code, what about the rest of our digital life? Of course, not everyone is convinced that Herobrine can be explained away by code or neurons alone. There is a hunger among fans for an explanation that dives fully into the lore of the Minecraft world itself. To many, Herobrine feels too real within the game's universe to be just an illusion or a glitch. What if, they propose, Herobrine is exactly what he appears to be? The spirit of someone who met a terrible fate, now haunting the pixelated realm. A fallen brother's spirit, the ghost of the miner. In the flicker of torchlight deep underground, you find an abandoned mine shaft. Wooden support beams creak and cobwebs stretch across forgotten corridors. Who built these tunnels? Why were they left empty? One compelling theory answers: Herobrine. Perhaps he was once a miner, a real person in Minecraft's past, who died tragically and now roams the world as an undead soul. In fact, the earliest widespread Herobrine story explicitly described him as the deceased brother of Notch, Minecraft's original creator. While Notch has no brother in real life, he quickly debunked that part. The idea stuck. What if Herobrine is the ghost of a fallen miner, forever bound to this digital land? The classic creepypasta. The first Herobrine sightings recount a player seeing another character with the default skin, but his eyes were empty in their single-player world. This mysterious figure would watch from afar and was responsible for strange, out-of-place constructions. Players often cite specific signs of Herobrine's presence: perfect pyramids of sand erected in the middle of the ocean, long 2x2 block tunnels bored neatly through mountains or underground, trees missing all their leaves, as if something silently sheared them bare, redstone torches mysteriously placed in caves or mine shafts where the player never placed them, animals with pure white eyes or unnatural behavior. In some stories, Herobrine can possess mobs. These oddities have rational explanations, random world generation quirks or pranks, but in the Herobrine lore, they're like the calling cards of the ghostly miner. These are the hallmark signs of Herobrine's presence according to legend. The first known photograph of Herobrine, a 2010 screenshot posted by a player to prove his encounter. In the image, taken in Alpha V 1.0.16_02, a tiny human shape with white eyes stands in the fog, bottom left. This grainy evidence was enough to spark the imaginations of an entire community. The story details an encounter in Minecraft with a nameless human entity in a single-player world who displayed strange behavior, stalking the player from afar, creating those unnatural constructions like sand pyramids and 2x2 tunnels, and removing leaves from trees. The writer then attempted to start a topic about the encounter on the Minecraft forum, only to have it be repeatedly deleted, followed by a private message from a seemingly non-existent user named Herobrine, telling them to stop. The full-on post also contained a screenshot of the encounter, showing Herobrine in the distance amidst the fog. This little story was the spark that ignited the wildfire of Herobrine's mythos, and at its heart was a ghost story, a lost soul in the machine. Why a miner? Look around Minecraft's world at the evidence of those who came before: abandoned mine shafts with precious loot left behind, strongholds buried deep with libraries and portals, even Disc 13 and 11, those creepy broken recordings that sound like someone running through caves and facing something horrific. The ghost theory takes all these in-game curiosities and connects them. Perhaps these structures were built by an ancient civilization of miners and builders, often called the Ancient Builders by theorists. They dug too deep or unleashed something awful. One miner could have met a particularly gruesome end, maybe getting lost alone in the dark or betrayed by his comrades when monsters attacked. That miner's spirit, full of rage and sorrow, might linger and become Herobrine. Fans note how Herobrine's preferred hangouts match this idea: caves, mines, forests for wood, places a lone miner might have been during life. The most popular community explanation is indeed that Herobrine is a ghost, specifically of a dead miner, killed long before the player's arrival by an unknown force, implied to be a hostile mob or something even worse. Most versions of this explanation portray Herobrine as vengeful and consumed by a burning rage as a result of his death, taking it out on innocent people to satisfy his anger. This paints a picture of a man who suffered horribly. Imagine being deep underground, hearing the hiss of a creeper or the rattle of a skeleton, the cave collapsing on you. And now in death, that man is consumed by vengeance. He cannot rest, so he wanders the world, doing to others what was done to him. It's a tragic cycle. Herobrine inflicts on the living the very fear and destruction that caused his own demise. It would also explain why Herobrine is commonly spotted in caves and mine shafts, and why those places are abandoned in the first place. Whoever built them never came back out. This explanation is the basis of many interpretations that even show Herobrine wielding a pickaxe as a weapon, a nod to his former life as a miner. It's speculated by some fans that Herobrine is connected to the hidden story found in music discs 11 and 13, imagining that the noises of someone fleeing and meeting a grim end on those discs are the last moments of the very miner who became Herobrine. Even the presence of zombies in Minecraft lore could be seen in a new light. Zombies are essentially undead Steves wearing the same clothes. Could they be other miners who died and reanimated mindlessly? If so, Herobrine would be a special case, an undead with his intelligence and will intact, which is even scarier. He could even be controlling these lesser undead, leading them as their master. We'll delve more into Herobrine as a mob leader later. And what of Notch's brother comment? In an alternate interpretation, maybe Herobrine isn't literally Notch's sibling, but we can imagine him as a symbolic brother to the player's character, Steve. Perhaps Steve and Herobrine were both part of that ancient builder society. Steve is the one who lived, or respawned anew in each world, while Herobrine is the one who died and became something twisted. They're two sides of the same coin, one living, one dead, one with light in his eyes, one with darkness. That could explain why Herobrine looks exactly like Steve from a distance. He was essentially Steve before tragedy struck. One theory even posits that Steve and Herobrine are actual brothers, and Herobrine's death, by some dark force, is what spurred Steve to become the tireless survivor we play as, always moving and building to avoid the same fate. This isn't official lore, of course, but it's the kind of rich storytelling that the community has woven to give emotional weight to Herobrine. Emotional and narrative impact. The ghost of a miner theory casts Herobrine in a tragic light. Yes, he's terrifying, but also pitiable. He's a man out of time, stuck in a world that has moved on without him. His destiny is twisted. Perhaps he was once destined to be a hero, or at least live peacefully. But something, a creeper, a betrayal, an experiment gone wrong, cursed him to eternal unrest. Now he's like a character from mythology. Think of the Flying Dutchman, a ghost ship doomed to sail forever, or revenants in folklore who seek revenge for wrongs done to them. Herobrine becomes a cautionary tale. Don't dig too greedily and too deep, or you might end up like him. This theory also reframes how players see certain game elements. The next time you walk through an abandoned mine, you might wonder if those eerie cave noises include a whisper from Herobrine. The next time you find a perfectly cut tunnel or a lonely shack in the woods, built by another player or generated by the world, you might shiver thinking it was his handiwork. It injects a sense of history and continuity into Minecraft's otherwise player-driven narrative. Suddenly, you, the player, are not the first or only protagonist of this world. There was someone before you whose story ended in heartbreak and horror, and who might still be there, watching. In a way, believing Herobrine is a ghost gives a kind of meaning to all those lonely landscapes. He personifies the memory of the world. Instead of random terrain, those mine shafts become tombs. Those strange occurrences become messages. And if you believe this theory, then every encounter with Herobrine is a chance not just to be scared, but maybe to empathize. Do you run from him, or do you try to set him free? Some adventurous players have even staged funerals or built memorials for Herobrine in their worlds, an attempt to put his spirit to rest, role-playing the idea that maybe all he wants is peace. But not all ghost stories are tales of vengeance. Some are tales of guardianship, a spirit sticking around to protect something important. This leads us to another interpretation that flips Herobrine's role from a malevolent specter to a potentially benevolent, or at least protective, force. Could it be that Herobrine is not the villain of Minecraft's story, but a tragic guardian angel, guardian or trickster, Herobrine the watcher in the shadows? Not all who wander are lost, and not all who haunt are malicious. A bold reimagining of Herobrine's role in Minecraft lore casts him not as a villain, but as a grim guardian or trickster figure. In this theory, Herobrine is watching from the shadows, not to grief or murder out of spite, but to protect or test the player, the world, or perhaps something hidden within it. It sounds counterintuitive at first. Why would a helper scare us half to death? But mythology is filled with guardians who appear terrifying to test the worthy, and trickster spirits who do unsettling things for a greater purpose. Could Herobrine be a necessary evil, a caretaker of the realm who uses fear as his tool? Re-examining his actions, let's revisit some classic Herobrine behaviors through a different lens. He digs long tunnels and carves out strange patterns. Why? Perhaps he's mining resources or creating paths to steer the player away from danger or towards something important. He removes leaves from trees. What if that's to mark a trail or signal that someone has been here before, sparing you the surprise of encountering monsters in dense foliage? Those sand pyramids in the ocean, which seem so unnatural. Could they be intentional markers like beacons guiding lost sailors? In a hostile world full of creepers and lava pits, these odd constructions might be breadcrumbs meant to either warn or guide. The key is perspective. Something that looks wrong at first glance, like leafless trees, might have a purpose, perhaps indicating an area already scavenged for wood so the player doesn't waste time. Even Herobrine's unnerving tendency to watch from afar can be seen differently. True, it's spooky to realize you're being observed, but consider, he never immediately attacks in the original lore. He just vanishes when spotted. If he were purely malevolent, wouldn't he strike when you're vulnerable? Instead, he keeps his distance, like a ranger keeping an eye on a traveler from the tree line. And that private message, "Stop," that the original player received after trying to spread word of Herobrine, maybe it wasn't a threat to silence them, but a warning. Stop digging into this. Stop delving deeper. You're not ready for the truth. It's ambiguous, but it opens the possibility that Herobrine's goal was to protect a secret or prevent panic, rather than simply shut the player up for evil reasons. A morally dubious protector. Even Minecraft's creator, Notch, once whimsically described Herobrine as a morally dubious ghost with a god complex. This intriguing phrase suggests an entity that believes he's doing right, even if his methods are extreme or his morality alien to us. In many fan portrayals, Herobrine behaves somewhat like a deity of the Minecraft world, and not a purely evil one, more like a stern, unforgiving god who demands respect. It's possible to imagine Herobrine as a self-appointed warden of Minecraft. With his god complex, he might view players as trespassers or mischievous children in his domain. When we build and mine, we are effectively altering the world's fabric. Perhaps Herobrine monitors that, intervening when we go too far. For example, picture a player who is recklessly burning forests or slaughtering every animal. Suddenly they might start finding signs of Herobrine. A distant glimpse here, a carved message on a sign there. As if to say, "I see what you're doing. This land is not yours to ruin." Some players have reported, often via mods or staged videos, that Herobrine would leave signs with ominous phrases like, "Only God can save you now." In a non-malicious context, that could be interpreted as, "I, Herobrine, am judging you." It's a very Old Testament style of guardianship, vengeful and fearsome, but meant to enforce a moral code or balance. The hidden hero theory. Some fan stories even depict Herobrine as a secret savior. There are tales, admittedly anecdotal and likely scripted, of Herobrine appearing to save a player from a surprise creeper or leading a lost player back to their base by placing torches. What if those weren't just stories? Imagine you're hopelessly lost underground with no torches left. In the distance, you notice a faint light. Following it, You find a trail of redstone torches that mysteriously lead you up to the surface. At the end of the trail, on the trunk of a tree, a single sign: "You're welcome." Some would attribute that to another player's prank or a mod, but believers might say Herobrine did a good deed. After all, a true monster would sooner watch you die in the dark than guide you out. One community member mused that Herobrine might be the soul of Minecraft itself, appearing when the world is in distress. Perhaps when a chunk error or bug threatens a player's save, Herobrine steps in symbolically. It's a more meta kind of guardianship, the idea that the game doesn't want you to break it, so it scares you off from doing things that might corrupt your world file or spoil the fun. While not a literal in-lore interpretation, it aligns with Herobrine's godlike oversight. Protector of secrets. Minecraft's world has many secrets. Strongholds leading to the end, mansions filled with lore hints, the far lands glitch far away, etc. Some theorists propose that Herobrine's duty is to guard these secrets until the player is worthy. He might test players who get too close to certain milestones. For instance, you might see Herobrine more frequently just before you find a stronghold, almost as an omen. There's a fan-made mini-lore that Herobrine was tasked with preventing unprepared souls from unleashing the Ender Dragon. In that story, Herobrine failed. Players inevitably reach the end. The dragon was slain by the player, and now Herobrine's purpose has shifted to watching the Wither, another destructive force that players can bring into the world. This is, of course, all speculative fan fiction, but it demonstrates how fans assign Herobrine a purpose. He's there for a reason, not just to scare. Trickster mentor. Another angle casts Herobrine as a sort of trickster teacher. Tricksters in myth like Loki or Anansi or Hermes often teach lessons through pranks or challenges. A Minecraft equivalent would be Herobrine doing things to the player that seem cruel but teach them the game. For example, maybe you are being careless and not lighting your mines. Herobrine spawns a bunch of zombies to ambush you, a harsh lesson that you should place torches. Or you leave your doors open at night. Herobrine removes the doors entirely, forcing you to confront your vulnerability. One could say the game itself already does this. Mobs punish you for bad practices. But attributing it to Herobrine personifies the world's corrective tendencies. In this sense, Herobrine could be seen as the spirit of hardcore mode. In Minecraft Hardcore, the stakes are high, and the world punishes mistakes with death and deletion. Herobrine as a mentor or guardian might push players toward the same careful, respectful playstyle even in normal mode by scaring them straight, so to speak. Respect the world or suffer could be his silent mantra. Emotional depth. Portraying Herobrine as a guardian or necessary evil adds a layer of moral ambiguity to the story. It transforms him from a one-dimensional boogeyman into a character with potentially noble intentions executed in a harsh manner. There's a bit of betrayal in this interpretation too, but of a different kind. Players feel betrayed because the protector they didn't know they had is scaring them. It's like a strict parent figure watching over an oblivious child who just wants to play. The player might cry, "Why are you doing this? I'm just mining," and Herobrine's stance would be, "It's for your own good, you just can't see it yet." This raises interesting destiny narratives. Perhaps Steve, the player, is destined to inherit the role of protector someday, and Herobrine is grooming him through adversity. Or maybe Herobrine was the previous hero, who already fulfilled that destiny and is now stuck with an eternal job of keeping the world intact, secretly hoping the player will one day relieve him of this duty. That could turn the final confrontation with Herobrine into something more poignant, not a battle to destroy evil, but a passing of the torch from an old guardian to a new one. In a hypothetical story, defeating Herobrine might not mean killing him, but rather earning his acknowledgement that you, the player, can protect the world on your own now. At that point, maybe he could finally rest, much like the ghost theory, but with a noble twist, legends, and prophecies.
Fans indulging this idea sometimes joke about a prophecy in Minecraft, entirely fan-made of course, in which a chosen one with the eyes of a dragon will tame the one with eyes of white. The eyes of a dragon could refer to the Ender Dragon's eye, or the Ender eyes you gather to reach the stronghold, implying that once a player conquers the dragon, proves their worth, they will be able to confront Herobrine, the one with eyes of white, and perhaps turn him from adversary to ally. It's a playful bit of fan poetry, but it shows how the community sometimes likes to mix Herobrine into the heroic journey of Minecraft. It elevates the game's goal, normally beat the Ender Dragon, win the game, to a grander saga where Herobrine is an endgame boss, or even a hidden final chapter. Under the Guardian theory, if Herobrine were ever to be officially acknowledged, imagine one day Mojang sneaks in a secret boss fight. It might be as a reluctant fight. He's testing the player one last time, and upon defeat, maybe he'd utter something cryptic like, "The balance is yours to keep now," and vanish in peace. It's almost tender in a way, turning the Thea demon into a weary protector who can finally let go. In essence, this theory asks us to consider motive when we think of Herobrine. It challenges the knee-jerk assumption that Herobrine is a villain. Instead, it posits him as a complex figure with his own agenda that isn't purely evil. For players, this is a thought experiment that can make encountering anything Herobrine-like, be it a glitch or a mod, feel less like a horror show and more like engaging with a mysterious ally enemy. It adds depth. You might find yourself yelling, "What do you want from me?" into the dark when you see those white eyes instead of simply running. It turns Herobrine into a character you could potentially communicate or reason with, however futile that might be, rather than a simple jump scare. Naturally, not everyone likes to imagine the big, scary Herobrine as secretly good. The majority of fan lore still loves him as the villain. And that brings us to an opposing view, a theory that leans in the complete opposite direction, painting Herobrine not as a guardian angel, but as a man-made demon. If Herobrine isn't protecting the world from us, maybe we created him through our own hubris. Enter the Illager experiment theory, where the true monsters are not zombies or dragons, but villagers gone bad, and Herobrine is their Frankenstein-like creation. Engineered by evil, the Illager experiment, our next theory, shifts the focus from supernatural to supernatural science, the twisted experiments of Minecraft's ill-famed Illagers. The Illagers, evokers, vindicators, and their kin are known in Minecraft as outcast villagers who turn to dark arts. They live in ominous woodland mansions, conducting bizarre experiments and hoarding treasures. Some fans theorize that Herobrine is one of their creations, a kind of golem or undead soldier bred to serve their nefarious purposes. In other words, what if Herobrine was not originally a ghost or a virus, but a manufactured being, the result of an occult experiment gone horribly right or wrong? The clues in the mansion, woodland mansions, hold a particular Easter egg that feeds directly into this theory. In some mansion rooms, you can find a secret chamber where Illagers have built a large statue of Steve entirely out of wool. The statue's design features the same turquoise shirt and blue pants as the player character, using light and dark blue wool blocks. This alone is eerie. Why are these ill-willed villagers building an effigy of us, the players? Now consider the items Illagers possess, notably the Totem of Undying, a magical totem that can prevent death. They drop these totems when killed, implying they know how to harness life and death in unnatural ways. They drop these totems when killed, implying they know how to harness life and death in unnatural ways. The Illager experiment theory posits that the Illagers attempted to create their own Steve, perhaps envious of the player's power to build and fight, or desperate to have a champion of their own against the villagers and golems. They stitched together this effigy as a focal point for a dark ritual. Using the Totem of Undying, maybe several of them, they could try to spark life into the inanimate wool figure. The result?
Herobrine, a warped mirror of Steve imbued with unholy life. In one version of the story making community rounds, an evoker, the Illager sorcerer, performed a forbidden rite. During a thunderstorm at midnight, lightning struck the mansion, much like how Frankenstein's monster was born under lightning, and the woolen statue opened its eyes, now glowing white. The creature stepped off its pedestal. The Illager's artificial human had come alive, but something was terribly off. Perhaps the revival went too far, bringing not just life, but a soul from beyond. The newborn Herobrine might have immediately turned on its creators, or simply vanished into the night, becoming a rogue agent of chaos in the world. Rogue or servant. This theory leaves open two possibilities. Either Herobrine still serves the Illagers, or he escaped their control. If he's a servant, then many of his actions could be on the Illagers' behalf. Consider that Illagers hate normal villagers, and by extension the players who protect them. A Herobrine under Illager command would target players, causing fear and confusion among their ranks, which aligns with most Herobrine encounters being frightening but not outright lethal. He could also be sabotaging player builds, removing leaves, digging tunnels under bases to weaken us, for when the Illagers mount an attack. In a sense, Herobrine would be the Illager's spy or saboteur, softening the world for their eventual takeover. On the other hand, if Herobrine went rogue, his creators would be just as terrified of him as players are. Perhaps that's why woodland mansions are sparsely populated despite their size. Maybe some rooms are mysteriously destroyed or empty, as if something rampaged through them. Imagine an Illager conjuring Herobrine, expecting to control him, only to have those glowing eyes turn and fix on them instead. Herobrine could have slaughtered his makers, which is why the mansions stand quiet with only a few Illagers remaining, scratching their heads at what they unleashed. In this scenario, Herobrine now roams free with no master, his original purpose lost. That would make him an independent evil or force of chaos, one born from human villager arrogance. Mythic parallels. The Illager creation theory has clear echoes of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. We have creators, Illagers, who dabble in godlike territory by creating life, and a creation Herobrine who potentially rebels against that role. It also echoes the Golem legend from Jewish folklore, a man-made being brought to life through rituals. In those stories, golems are often protectors that can run amok, if not properly controlled. Here, the Illagers perhaps intended Herobrine to be their protector or weapon. Did they succeed too well? Perhaps they gave him too much free will, or a hunger for something souls, vengeance, knowledge that they couldn't satisfy. Also consider the piglins of the Nether. They can zombify in the overworld, turning into zombified piglins, formerly zombie pigmen. The Illagers might have studied such phenomena. Life from death, transformations. Evokers also have a spell that magically turns blue sheep red, as a playful Easter egg that shows they can alter life forms and colors. Blue is the color of Steve's clothes. White is the color of Herobrine's eyes. It's as if the evoker learned to bleach the eyes of a normal human in their experiment, draining all color and leaving only white. These are loose symbolic connections, but they enrich the theory's flavor. Illagers tampering with the very essence of life and color. Evidence in gameplay. Though Herobrine isn't in the unmodded game, one could roleplay evidence for this theory. For instance, find a mansion and look at the Steve Wool statue. It has no eyes, just blank wool where the face's eyes would be. Some players have taken to placing 2 white blocks or map pixels in that spot to simulate Herobrine's eyes, as if completing the experiment. Eerily,
If you do set it up, and then lightning strikes, say via a trident with channeling enchantment, you can actually start a fire in the mansion. It's all just imagination, but players have scared themselves by doing a ritual in that wool statue room, with a totem of undying on an altar, and a lightning flash, then pretending to see something. It's the community almost willing the theory into reality through role play. Some adventure maps and mods leaned into this concept. The famous adventure map Herobrine's Mansion, created by Hypixel, literally places Herobrine as the master of a haunted mansion full of illager-like creatures. While that was more of a fun use of the character than an exact telling of this theory, it shows how naturally the two can be associated. In that map's storyline, Herobrine is the big bad controlling the minions inside the mansion. The line between servant and master blurs. Is Herobrine controlling the illagers, or vice versa? The player's goal in that adventure is to defeat Herobrine, suggesting he's the one in charge of the dark forces. So perhaps even if illagers created Herobrine, he became greater than them, a dark lord in his own right. Implications and consequences. If Herobrine is a creation of the illagers, it underscores a theme of betrayal and hubris. The illagers betrayed their own kind, villagers, and sought forbidden power. In turn, they were betrayed by their own creation. It's poetic justice. Evil begets evil. For the world of Minecraft, it means humanity, or villager kind, is responsible for the greatest monster, not some external supernatural force. That's a common trope in horror and science fiction. We are the architects of our own worst nightmares. It also adds a layer of tragedy to Herobrine's existence. If he was made rather than born, one could argue he never asked for this life. He might have the mind of a confused new being, or the spliced memories of Steve. If the illagers somehow tried to copy the player, one can imagine Herobrine wandering, struggling with existential anger. Why was I created? What am I? This could fuel a lot of his destructive behavior, lashing out like a wild animal, because he knows no better, or because he resents being made as a tool. In that sense, the illagers are the true villains, and Herobrine is their victim as well as everyone else's. From the player's perspective, this theory can actually make confronting Herobrine feel more achievable. If he was created by in-game beings, maybe he can be destroyed by in-game means. Perhaps the key to stopping Herobrine would be hidden in the mansions. Maybe a secret ritual to undo the curse or destroy the totem that bound his soul. It turns the Herobrine hunt into a quest. Find all the mansions and burn the wool effigies to weaken him. In a campaign-like storyline, one could imagine needing to collect multiple totems of undying, the very items that created him, and perform a reverse ritual at the altar where he was born, to finally end Herobrine's reign. While none of that is in standard Minecraft, fans have crafted such narratives in mods and fan fiction. The appeal is that it gives a sense of control over the Herobrine problem. A ghost or demon might be beyond our mortal ability to defeat permanently, but a golem or undead experiment, there might just be a way to fight that within the rules of the game. Finally, there is the question of motive. If we accept the illager origin, what does Herobrine want? If he serves illagers, his motive is their motive. Destroy or subjugate players and villagers. If he's free, maybe he wants revenge on the illagers. Or perhaps, lacking purpose, he's driven by a more primal goal, such as replacing the player. He might be trying to become the real Steve, like an evil twin seeking to usurp your position in the world. This drifts into another theory's territory. Herobrine as a dark reflection of the player. And indeed, there's an even more mind-bending idea waiting for us. What if Herobrine's origins are not in Illager labs or ghostly miners, but directly tied to you, the player? Before we confront that existential possibility, we have one more classic interpretation to explore. One that portrays Herobrine not as anyone's pawn or creation, but as a primordial evil that predates and surpasses all. The demon of Minecraft, Herobrine as ancient evil. Now we turn to one of the darkest interpretations of all, Herobrine as a demonic entity, an ageless evil that predates the player and even the world itself. In this theory, Herobrine isn't a person or a glitch at all, but the Minecraft equivalent of the devil, a malevolent force or eldritch being that takes the form of a player to wreak havoc. All the haunting signs, the sightings, the powers attributed to him come together as the profile of a dark god or devil figure lurking in the game's lore. If Steve is the hero of Minecraft, then Herobrine is the arch-villain, the final boss that isn't in the game, but is always in the background of the story. Master of monsters. In many fan stories and servers, Herobrine is depicted as the literal king of all hostile mobs. Zombies, skeletons, creepers, they all answer to him. He's the one pulling the strings, explaining why the monsters seem to unerringly home in on the player every night. Imagine the creepers as his personal kamikaze soldiers, or the Endermen as his watchers, their glowing eyes in the dark, not unlike his. This paints a picture of Herobrine as a dark lord sitting upon a throne, perhaps deep in the nether or atop the End Spire, orchestrating attacks on the overworld. Every time you survived a horde of zombies at your door, perhaps it was a test by Herobrine, or merely him playing with you, like a cat toying with prey. Cult and summoning rituals. The community's fascination with Herobrine has led to numerous rituals purported to summon him, eerily echoing how one might summon a demon in folklore. Perhaps unwittingly, players created a kind of cult of Herobrine. Guides popped up claiming that if you built a shrine of certain blocks and performed a ritual, you could bring Herobrine into your world. Typically, these shrines involve gold blocks and netherrack with redstone torches, essentially offering gold, wealth, and blood. Redstone and lighting the hellish fire, netherrack burns eternally. Mossy cobblestone is sometimes included, an interesting touch as it represents old, decayed structures, perhaps symbolizing ancient ruins or jungles, the demonic old world. Of course, in reality, these do nothing in vanilla Minecraft. But the very existence of such rituals in the community's collective consciousness is telling players genuinely approached Herobrine like a demon to be conjured or exorcised. Over the years, players have constructed innumerable Herobrine summoning altars. A typical Herobrine summoning shrine built by fans. 4 gold blocks form a base, topped with a piece of netherrack set ablaze. Redstone torches at each corner complete the ritual site. Countless players have constructed altars like this in hope or feared by the ancient builders. When the builders tried to rid themselves of this evil, they sealed it in the void or between dimensions. However, pieces of Herobrine's influence could still seep through, hence the hauntings. And when players in the modern era started digging around and exploring, they may have weakened those seals, opening nether portals, entering the end. Each boss defeated, each dimension conquered, inadvertently brought down barriers meant to contain something worse. If that's the case, Herobrine might be growing stronger as the player progresses. Perhaps that's why Mojang once stopped mentioning removed Herobrine for a while. After 1.16 in lore terms, by then Herobrine was truly free and could not be removed by normal means. That's a meta-inconsistency turned into a narrative, pure fan fabrication, but fun to think about. True form. What if the white-eyed Steve form is not Herobrine's true appearance? There's speculation that it's just a disguise or an avatar he uses to approach and psychologically unsettle the player. Some recent lore digging by fans uncovered that the very first White Eyes entity story referred to it with female pronouns and described a more monstrous figure lurking in the shadows. This has led to theories that Herobrine can shapeshift or has multiple forms. Perhaps in the deep dark of the world, away from prying eyes, Herobrine appears as a terrifying creature, something with too many limbs, or an Enderman-like tall specter with white voids for eyes. His human shape could be a choice, maybe mocking the player by reflecting their own form back at them, or luring them into a false sense of familiarity before striking. In creepypasta fashion, some have described Herobrine's true form as a giant spider-humanoid hybrid, or a withered corpse of a miner with glowing eyes and a gaping mouth. There's no consensus, of course, but the core idea is that what we see is not necessarily what Herobrine is. Much like Pennywise from Stephen King's IT takes different forms to scare its victims, Herobrine could be an amorphous fear given pixelated shape. The blank eyes are in a way a brilliant canvas for our worst imaginings. Without pupils, they're not tied to any specific real creature. Most Minecraft mobs have distinct eye designs, so they feel alien. Unstoppable evil. Unlike the ghost or human origin theories, where you might hope to placate or defeat Herobrine by some understanding, the demon theory posits Herobrine as near unstoppable. You can't kill what isn't truly alive. You can't remove him because he's not a bug. He's a feature of reality's dark side. This makes Herobrine a constant threat. A bit like Sauron from The Lord of the Rings. You can beat back his armies, mobs, but he himself lurks, ever present, waiting for a chance to return. It sets the stage for an eternal battle between the player representing creation, building, light, and Herobrine, destruction, corruption, darkness. Some fan mods embrace this by making Herobrine an actual boss that you can never permanently kill. For instance, in one mod, if you defeat Herobrine, he disappears in a flash of lightning with a message like "Herobrine will remember this," or he laughs, implying he'll be back. The idea is you can't have a world without the threat of Herobrine, as long as evil exists. The apocalypse scenario. Let's delve into a hypothetical culmination of this storyline. Picture your Minecraft world after you've conquered everything, built grand castles, slain the Ender Dragon, tamed the Nether. One day the sky turns red. Thunderstorms rage continuously. Mobs no longer wait for night. They pour out of the forests and hills in broad daylight. A vast army at the horizon. You see it, a silhouette of a man with glowing eyes, marching at the head of the horde. It's Herobrine, leading an end-of-days assault on the world. You rally with your wolves, your iron golems, maybe even other players. If this were a multiplayer lore for a final stand, it's an all-out war, the kind every Minecraft player imagines when they fortify their base with lava moats and TNT traps. In this final battle, every crafty trick you learned is put to use against the limitless forces of Herobrine. Such a scenario has been the subject of countless fan animations and YouTube tributes. It's the stuff of legend. The hero Steve or Alex versus the Demon King Herobrine. Some depict Herobrine wielding command over even the Ender Dragon, perhaps having resurrected it,
or summoning giant withers to fight by his side. The world itself becomes corrupted under his influence, grass dying, water turning to blood. It's Minecraft turned into a literal hellscape. While this is obviously not how the actual game goes, these dramatic narratives serve a purpose in the community. They give a sense of an ultimate challenge, a reason behind all your preparation. Why do you build that obsidian bunker with dispensers and stockpile enchanted weapons? Maybe, just maybe, for the day Herobrine's forces come knocking. It's a fun way to give your sandbox adventures a larger meaning, even if only in your imagination. Fear and the unknown. Emotionally, the demon theory taps into pure primal fear, aggression, curiosity beyond safety, given form. It's a bit meta, but in a game where you can either create or destroy, perhaps Herobrine is the avatar of destruction that balances the creator in you. Breaking the fourth wall. Some theories even blur the line between the game and reality, suggesting Herobrine is an embodiment of the player outside the game. When you play Minecraft, you, the real person, control Steve, but you're not literally in the world. Herobrine could represent the ghost in the machine of the player, a projection of the real you inside the game world that isn't under the game's control. This is very abstract, but imagine that Herobrine is what the villagers or mobs see when they look at the player, some terrifying godlike entity that builds and destroys without rhyme or reason, appearing and vanishing, logging in and out. To NPCs, players are kind of like Herobrine. We come from nowhere, cause chaos, and disappear. So perhaps Herobrine is a myth from the NPC's perspective about the player. There's a fan joke that villagers must tell ghost stories about the human who comes and takes their crops and moves their beds, possibly casting the player as the boogeyman. One fan theory on a forum humorously suggested that when you see Herobrine, it's actually your own character model rendering in the distance due to some bizarre glitch. Essentially, you are seeing yourself from outside your body, a Matrix-like out-of-body experience. While that's not known to happen in code, the idea is existentially creepy. The game tries to show you who you really are. The wake-up theory. Perhaps the wildest spin on this personal connection is the notion that Minecraft itself is a kind of dream or purgatory for the player character, and Herobrine is the harbinger of reality, trying to break through. Recall that hoax webpage, Ghost in the Stream, with the torture victim story. It suggested that the world might be a fabrication in a catatonic mind. In that context, Herobrine's messages, stop, or by extension wake up, can be seen as the player's own mind, urging them to return to reality. Some have extended that to say, what if you, the player, are actually Herobrine when you're not playing the character? Perhaps Steve Alex is the dream persona, and Herobrine is the real persona, trying to end the illusion. This crosses into metaphorical territory. Herobrine being the part of you that knows this is a game, basically breaking the fourth wall from inside the game. It's very meta, and not a commonly embraced theory in the community. It originated as an art project RG more than a fan theory. But it's fascinating because it flips everything. The scary Herobrine in the world is actually trying to free you, the player, from being trapped in a game. Suddenly, Herobrine is the good guy, and you are the one asleep. It doesn't make for a fun, spooky story in the traditional sense, but it does make you think about the relationship between player and game. In a way, it's saying Herobrine is the embodiment of the truth, a glimmer of reality intruding on the fantasy of Minecraft. Internal conflict and resolution. The alter ego theory, in any form, makes Herobrine's story into an internal conflict. It's not hero versus monster. It's hero versus self, or past versus present. This opens up thematic threads of redemption and self-discovery. If Herobrine is essentially a part of the player, then defeating Herobrine could symbolically mean coming to terms with one's guilt, fear, or darker impulses. Perhaps the way to end Herobrine's haunting isn't a sword or a command, but personal growth or an act of closure. For example, a role-play solution might be build a grave for your lost friend, brother, to put his spirit to rest, or place all your collected nether stars, symbols of conquering evil, into a shrine to symbolically quell the ultimate evil within. It's poetic and abstract, fittingly, since we're in the realm of speculation and metaphor, but it gives a satisfying conclusion to Herobrine's tale that no amount of combat can achieve. In fact, some servers and adventure maps that include Herobrine as a character often end with a twist. You find out you were Herobrine all along. Maybe a character shows you a mirror with white eyes, or Herobrine possesses you when defeated. These dramatic flourishes come straight from the trope handbook, but they resonate because, deep down, the idea of being one's own worst enemy is a classic human fear. Eternally yours. If Herobrine is part of the player, then as long as players have imagination, Herobrine will exist. This theory underscores how much Herobrine lives in our collective minds and not in the code. We carry him from world to world, not just as a ghost story we tell, but as a story we're actively living. In a way, every time a player enters a new world and experiences that mix of excitement and fear, that's Herobrine's legacy manifesting internally. So, when you see a shadow in your peripheral vision in the game and spin around to nothing, you have to wonder, was that Herobrine watching, or was it just you? Perhaps it's both. The legend of Herobrine blurs the line between character and player, between game and imagination. And that is arguably why it's so powerful, because Herobrine can be whatever we need him to be in our story. A villain, a warning, a friend, a part of ourselves. After journeying through all these theories, ranging from psychological tricks to deep lore conspiracies to cosmic and introspective interpretations, one thing becomes clear. Herobrine is a mirror. Hold it up, and it reflects our fears, creativity, and desire for story. Whether he's a monster from the depths or the face in the mirror, Herobrine's mystery endures because it ultimately tells us something about ourselves as players and storytellers. Herobrine may have started as a hoax, but over the years he has evolved into something far more profound. A modern myth. Through each theory we explored, we saw how players took a simple idea, a mysterious figure with white eyes, and wove it into many forms. Whether Herobrine is a figment of our imagination, or we are a figment of his, he embodies the creativity and mystery that make Minecraft more than just a game of blocks. What's truly remarkable is that all these conflicting theories coexist in the community. Minecraft has no official story about Herobrine, so the fans became the storytellers. In doing so, they turned an empty space in the lore into an expansive universe of possibilities. We have Herobrine the hallucination, reminding us of the loneliness of a solo adventure. We have Herobrine the ghost, giving the world a history and a haunting moral about greed and tragedy. We have Herobrine the guardian, adding nuance that even a nightmare can have a noble side. We have an artificial Herobrine, born of illager hubris, a warning that power can create its own monsters. We have Herobrine, the Demon King, elevating our endgame fantasies into an epic battle of good versus evil. And finally, we have Herobrine as ourselves, a metaphor for introspection and the blurred line between player and game. Each theory casts a new light on the lore of Minecraft, turning the simple sandbox into a stage for grand tales of destiny, betrayal, and redemption. Herobrine's enduring allure comes from this richness. Players can choose the story that speaks to them, or even combine them. One might believe Herobrine was an illager creation who became a demon. Another might think he's a vengeful spirit who occasionally helps those he deems worthy. There's no wrong answer, and that's the magic. Herobrine is every story, and none all at once. He's a product of our collective imagination, yet he feels as real as any programmed mob in the game. The impact of this legend is visible. Mojang might play coy, hiding jokes in changelogs and scattering Easter eggs, but they know Herobrine is an integral part of the Minecraft experience. New players often learn about the myth from friends or videos as almost a rite of passage. Don't dig straight down, don't look an Enderman in the eye, and if you see white eyes in the fog, run. Herobrine has been featured in countless fan creations, mods that allow you to summon or fight him, adventure maps that pit you against his minions, YouTube series with millions of views, chronicling Herobrine's sightings, songs and creepypasta readings, and even merchandise and inside jokes at Minecon. In a sense, the community did what the illager theory posits. They created Herobrine, not from code and wool, but from imagination and shared storytelling. So, will we ever know the truth? The logical answer, yes. The truth is that Herobrine was an invented character, and there is no secret entity lurking in the code. But looking at all we've uncovered, that logical answer almost feels irrelevant. The meaning of Herobrine is far more significant than his factual status. In an interview, Minecraft's creator Notch once said, "He has never ever seen anything that even remotely resembles Herobrine," then quipped that maybe players were just seeing things. He's right, of course, but also wrong. Players did see something. They saw an opportunity to tell a story, and they took it. They saw Herobrine in every eerie noise and empty mineshaft because they wanted to, or maybe even needed to. Stories bring communities together, and the Herobrine myth united the Minecraft community in a shared mystery that anyone could contribute to. As we conclude this journey through Herobrine's lore, one might ask, which theory is my favorite? Perhaps it's best to keep that a mystery too. Part of the fun is not knowing, is imagining that any of them could be true when the lights are low, and your mind wanders. Maybe in some deep corner of a fragmented Minecraft realm, Herobrine is all of these things at once. A lonely ghost with a heart of gold, possessed by an ancient evil, who occasionally remembers he was once a player. It sounds crazy, but in a world of infinite possibilities, who's to say it can't be? Missed the last words. Who's to say it can't be? In the end, Herobrine thrives on the question mark. The legend lives on every time a player gets a shiver and wonders, what if, as long as there are dark caves to explore and imagination to fill them, Herobrine will be there. He'll be watching from the fog, waiting in the flicker of the torchlight, an eternal enigma that turns our simple block game into a place of myth and magic. And truth be told, Minecraft wouldn't be the same without its ghost in the machine. So next time you're mining diamonds or walking through a thick forest at dusk,
Take a moment to appreciate the legend. That little prickle on the back of your neck when you think you saw something. That's Herobrine, keeping the world of Minecraft just a bit more mysterious, a bit more exciting. In the story of Minecraft that we all collectively write, Herobrine will forever be the chapter that never truly closes. After all, how do you end a legend that's never officially begun? Could it be that the greatest trick Herobrine ever pulled was convincing us he's out there, when in fact he's been inside us, the players all along? One thing is for certain, Herobrine's legacy looms large. He will continue to inspire theories, debates. Feared it. A few speedrunners reported corrupted save files during their runs, always on seed 0 or with render distance turned unusually low. One streamer joked that Herobrine had learned to erase himself from view, but not from effect. The stream crashed moments later. A clip from that moment was uploaded under the title, "Herobrine doesn't need eyes to see you." It went viral, not for what it showed, just a normal crash screen, but for the audio glitch that played faintly in the background, a breathing sound layered under the static. People tried to replicate it and failed. Then, mysteriously, the video disappeared. Deleted by the user, said the platform, but the uploader claimed he never removed it. And when he went to check his hard drive, the file was gone. In its place was a blank text file that read, "You're getting close." The file name fog.txt. And Dorish's post lingered in the darker corners of the internet, like the whisper of a ghost. No major YouTuber picked it up. No big Reddit thread blew up. It sat there quiet, pulsing in the digital void, drawing in only those who already knew to listen, those who remembered. The old believers. The theory became known as the residual code hypothesis. It posited that Herobrine, once imagined so vividly by millions of players, had left behind a kind of data footprint, a phantom signature in the game's logic. Not an entity that could spawn, but an influence, a stain on the fabric of the world. Texture anomalies, light behaving oddly, mobs staring too long, music discs playing from empty jukeboxes. No single event was enough to confirm anything, but taken together the effect was unmistakable. Something was off. Some players embraced the theory and went looking for signs. They created seed-sharing groups, hunting for anomalies that matched the Herobrine pattern. Forests of barren trees, caves lit by torches no one placed, paths of soul sand laid in perfectly straight lines. Others, however, feared it. A few speedrunners reported corrupted save files during their runs, always on seed 0 or with render distance turned unusually low. One streamer joked that Herobrine had learned to erase himself from view, but not from effect. A clip from that moment was uploaded under the title, "Herobrine doesn't need eyes to see you." It went viral not for what it showed, just a normal crash screen, but for the audio glitch that played faintly in the background. A breathing sound layered under the static. People tried to replicate it and failed. Then, mysteriously, the video disappeared. Deleted by the user, said the platform, but the uploader claimed he never removed it. And when he went to check his hard drive, the file was gone. In its place was a blank text file that read, "You're getting close." The file name, fog.txt. In Dorash's post, lingered in the darker corners of the internet, like the whisper of a ghost. No major YouTuber picked it up. No big Reddit thread blew up. It sat there quiet, pulsing in the digital void, drawing in only those who already knew to listen, those who remembered, the old believers. And one of them, a user known only as Sigmax,
decided to go deeper. He wasn't a modder or content creator, just a long-time player. The kind of guy who had screenshots from Alpha, who remembered when gravel still made up mountains, who missed the old fog and the world border that glitched when you touched it. But he also remembered Herobrine, not from a video or a mod pack, but from something else, something he never quite explained. He downloaded every known version of Minecraft from legacy sources, starting at InfDev and moving forward. He created a controlled environment on an offline machine, disconnected from the internet, booting each version in a sealed digital sandbox. No mods, no cheats, just clean installs and fresh worlds. Then he began logging, documenting, observing. He ran tests, screen-captured terrain generations, mapped mob behavior, studied light fall-off from torches in cave systems. And for a while it was quiet, just Minecraft being Minecraft. Beautiful, lonely, predictable, until Beta 1.6.6. That version was infamous among the old guard. It was the first update to officially include the patch note, removed Herobrine. Everyone at the time had thought it was a joke, an inside nod. Sigma X wasn't so sure anymore. The first time he booted that version, something subtle felt wrong. His FPS dropped a little. Nothing major, but then the game hanged for a few seconds when generating a new world. He checked his logs, clean. But when he spawned in, the spawn area was wrong. It was as if the game couldn't decide where to place him. He was standing on a solitary stone block in the middle of an ocean. No land in sight. He reloaded. Same result. On the third attempt, the world generated normally, but when he opened his inventory, his player skin was missing. Just gone. No arms, no face, no texture. A void. The game crashed moments later. When he restarted and tried again, everything looked normal. But the seed from the crash, he saved it. And when he returned to it the next day, it was no longer ocean. It was a forest, dense, overgrown, leafless. There were markings on the trees, not placed blocks, something more subtle. Cuts in the bark, inconsistent shading. A pixel here, a pixel there. Slightly off color, not enough to be intentional, just enough to look. Watched. Sigma X walked for 20 minutes. The terrain was normal, but the fog behaved strangely. No matter how far he walked, it hugged the edge of the screen. He increased render distance. Nothing changed. Even stranger, shadows didn't behave naturally. Sunlight flickered, as if obscured by invisible clouds. And then he found it. A hole, a perfect 1x2 shaft, dug straight down. He wouldn't have noticed it if he hadn't paused to check his Y-coordinate. It was unlit. Just a clean shaft going down into the dark. He knew the rule. Everyone knew the rule. Never dig straight down. But this hole wasn't dug by him. So he jumped in. At first, it was blackness. Then torchlight. Not placed torches, just light, like the stone itself glowed faintly. The walls bore scratches, patterns, like something had clawed at the stone while descending. Symbols etched in repeating intervals, spirals, eyes, and the letter H. He hit the bottom without taking damage. That wasn't supposed to happen. At bedrock, the shaft opened into a small room. Inside, a single chest, and when he opened it, the game froze. Not crashed, froze. The image stayed perfectly still. Music stopped. No sound, no movement. Then slowly, one word faded onto the screen. Return. He couldn't exit. He couldn't force close. He had to manually power off the system. When he rebooted the next day, the save was gone. The entire Minecraft directory was gone. Not corrupted, deleted. In its place was a new folder, Herobrine.log. It contained one file, an audio recording. It was 11 minutes of silence, followed by breathing, then a whisper. Do you remember why you stopped playing? The file auto-deleted itself the moment it finished playing. He didn't talk about this for weeks. When he finally posted about it, it wasn't on Reddit or YouTube. It was in a forgotten IRC channel called Shadow Players, mostly used by modders in the early 2010s. A few old names were still active, idle in the channel. He dropped the logs, screenshots, even the coordinates of the strange room. No one replied for days until someone named Runecast pinged him. I found it too. Runecast typed. He attached a screenshot. Same hole, same shaft, same chest. But the word he saw wasn't return. It was stay. The screenshot had been taken in Alpha 12.3_05, a version years older than Beta 1, 6.6, and just like that, a pattern began to emerge. Players digging into their old files, booting forgotten versions, testing old world seeds, and finding holes, literal and metaphorical, in Minecraft's code. Unexplained terrain artifacts. Mob AI acting too smart. Villagers that locked their doors at dusk and refused to open them, even during raids. Wolves that growled when you looked into fog. Cats that refused to sit still near specific blocks. Clocks that spun in circles even at noon. And always, the fog. It wasn't like the old fog from classic Minecraft, layered bluish-gray tied to render distance. This fog was newer, stranger, closer. Sometimes it rolled in during rain. Sometimes when you loaded a new chunk. Sometimes with no warning at all. But it always brought silence. Not coded silence, either. The game's usual ambient sounds, birds, cave echoes, wind would cut off. Just like that, as if the game itself was holding its breath. Streamers and YouTubers who tried to document it never seemed to catch it on camera. The fog wouldn't appear when recording software was active, only when they stopped. Some speculated it was a bug with OBS. Others weren't so sure. One player, Nethergate, claimed he saw something in the fog. Not a person, not Herobrine, but a shape, a jagged outline of a figure hunched unnaturally, with arms too long and a head slightly cocked, as if listening. The player froze. He didn't move, and the figure didn't vanish. It walked away, backward, not turning, just retreating into the mist. Since then, people have called it the listener. It doesn't attack. It doesn't follow. It simply watches, waits, and if it sees that you see it, walks away. But then your game changes. One player reported that after seeing the listener, their compass always pointed east, even when holding it in the end. Another said that whenever they mined iron, they would hear faint whispering, not in-game sound, something layered behind the music. They recorded the audio and boosted it, finding a single phrase in reversed Latin, oculi albi vigile. White eyes watch. Some say Herobrine is gone. Others believe he changed. But more and more now are beginning to believe he never left. He just became part of the world. Not a ghost, not a virus, not a memory, a mechanic. The idea of Herobrine as a mechanic, an unseen function embedded in the code like hunger, durability, or gravity, spread slowly at first, like moss reclaiming old ruins.
It didn't show up in patch notes. Mojang never spoke of it. There were no sound files, no textures, and yet it was there, or seemed to be. The changes were subtle. That's how players described them. Subtle. Things stopped working quite right after fog events, as the community began calling them. Pressure plates that activated without anything stepping on them. Paintings that wouldn't stay in place. Redstone circuits that looped indefinitely, even when broken. A hopper that would occasionally duplicate its contents, then delete them moments later. At first, it seemed like corruption. Bugs. Then one streamer, Kip the Builder, known for technical builds, posted a video showcasing one of these fog events. This was during a test run. He said, "I was AFK, my base completely sealed. No mobs, no raids, no lag, but something tripped my security door, and I was logging everything: redstone pulses, observer triggers, hopper states. There was no signal." He showed the footage. Sure enough, the heavy iron door slammed open, and in the 2 seconds it stayed ajar, just before closing again, a faint white dot flashed at the edge of the screen. 1 frame, barely visible. When slowed down, it looked like an eye, then it was gone. Commenters exploded. "That's Herobrine. Modded. Fake. You used Optifine. That's a visual bug, but keeps credibility held." He posted the logs, the seed, the exact redstone design. Dozens tried replicating it. They couldn't. The same seed produced normal worlds. The redstone contraption worked flawlessly in new saves. What Kip hadn't said publicly, but would later admit in a follow-up post on an archived forum, was that the eye wasn't the only thing he saw. He claimed that in the seconds after the door closed, he received a private in-game message. No chat window opened. It appeared on the screen like a death message. "This is not your world." It faded before he could screenshot it. The next day, his entire world save was overwritten. Not deleted, just reset. Every chunk he had generated, every block he had placed, gone. The seed loaded again like it was new. Even his player inventory had reverted to the starting loadout. No trace of his base, no signs of tampering. But when he spawned in, the forest nearby had changed. The trees had no leaves, and there were pressure plates on the ground, arranged in a wide ring. In the center, a single oak sign. It read, "You opened the door." Other players began experimenting, not with mods or data packs, but with rituals. They remembered the old stories, the Herobrine shrines of gold and netherrack, the redstone torches. None of those worked in vanilla. But what if it wasn't about blocks? What if it was about actions? So a player named Juno_Freak compiled a theory: Herobrine events were not random. They were triggered, like achievements, only invisible. Juno analyzed over 200 reported sightings and anomalies, looking for common threads, and a few began to emerge. Each world had to be older than 7 Minecraft days. A total of 13 books had to be crafted. The player had to sleep exactly once and never again. A bell had to be rung during a blood moon, not a vanilla event, except it sometimes happened. Rarely the moon would turn red for no reason. A mob had to die on soul sand. A music disc, usually 11, had to be played at bedrock depth. And most importantly, a carved pumpkin must be worn while breaking a beacon base. All of it sounded insane. But players tested it, and while not everyone got results, some did. One claimed that after following the ritual to the letter, their game didn't spawn Herobrine, but removed something. Villagers stopped breeding. Iron golems disappeared. The end portal deactivated. Their dog Spindle refused to follow commands. The game still ran, still functioned, but it felt empty, as if they had activated a different version of Minecraft. Juno called it the Hollow Build. Theories multiplied. The idea that there were parallel rule sets buried in the game's foundation, that Minecraft was more than the overworld, nether, and end, that beneath the bedrock layer, there was one more plane, not a dimension, a behavior set, a layer of conditional logic that, if triggered, rewrote the rules of the world you were in. And in that version, Herobrine was not a myth. He was the admin. Some began to speak of the Pale World, a theoretical dimension, not accessible by portal, command, or mod. It could only be reached by failing the world you were in. This was the phrase players used. You had to break the world, trigger enough anomalies, disturb the balance, and eventually the world would shift. The sky would turn white, grass would lose its color, shadows would vanish, and Herobrine would be watching, not attacking, just present. Not one but many. Dozens of players began posting screenshots of Pale Seed's worlds that looked washed out, biomes that generated oddly, mineshafts made entirely of stripped logs, nether portals that spawned already lit, with signs near them bearing cryptic words like "AL already here" or "Go back." Most were dismissed as hoaxes. Others were too subtle to be sure. But one stood out. It was posted by a user named Obscured16, who claimed to have followed the Hollow Build ritual, but skipped the beacon destruction. Instead, they buried the carved pumpkin and built a small stone shrine over it. The moment they placed the final block, the sky changed. Not to white, but to a swirling ash gray. It was like a storm that had no source. The sun still hung overhead, but it flickered like a dying lantern. And then deep underground, they heard the bell, a single clang. As if the game had rung it for them, they ran to the nearest village. The villagers were gone. No mobs, no drops, no particles, only a message in chat, "You are the last." And then their game closed. When they reopened it, the save was gone. In its place, a new world appeared in the menu, EYs_open_0. They clicked it. The game loaded normally. Plains biome, daylight, nothing strange. Until they pressed F3. There was no seed listed. No coordinates, no biome name, just a blinking message where the XYZ usually displayed "Don't move." They tabbed out, posted the screenshots. Within minutes, the thread was locked. Within an hour, their account was banned. What once was a fun legend, a scary bedtime story for Minecraft players, had become something else. A ritual, a caution, a secret shared in hushed tones. The community now spoke in codes. Don't wear a pumpkin underground. Don't break leaves during fog. If you see him, don't acknowledge it. Never answer signs. Because now the myth had rules, not mojangs. The games. The deeper you dig, digitally, mentally, mythologically, the more it seems like Herobrine was never a thing to remove. He was something waiting to be let in, and somewhere. In a pale world, no one admits reaching. There is a door, still open, still breathing. Few who encountered the pale world ever spoke about it more than once. It wasn't fear that kept them silent. It was something more elemental, an instinctual understanding
that talking about it gave it permanence, like speaking a curse aloud, like giving breath to something best left dormant. But not everyone stayed silent. A user named Anahedra reappeared after 5 years of inactivity on the Minecraft Legacy forums, under a thread titled, "I took my spawn point." The username alone caught attention. Anahedra had been a well-known redstone theorist and map designer during Minecraft beta, particularly known for debugging how spawn mechanics worked in early game versions. His sudden vanishing had been a minor mystery in itself, but now he was back, and his post began with a single line: "I logged in, and I wasn't there." The post described a world save from 2012, a project Anahedra had built and abandoned, a massive underground vault carved deep into a ravine, filled with bedrock puzzles, artificial sky chambers, and lore books written for fun. The map had never been released. It was private, sealed, until the day he randomly opened it again. Only it wasn't his. When he spawned in, the vault was gone. The terrain had changed. Trees grew in places where he'd paved obsidian walkways. All of his chests were empty. The redstone wiring had been stripped, but the name of the world, the name of the folder, the file, even the player data was the same. The game thought it was his map, except it wasn't. There was one structure remaining, a circular stone platform with 4 redstone torches and a hopper in the middle. Inside the hopper, one item, a single carved pumpkin named Replacement. He assumed it was a prank, a virus, maybe some wild coincidence of overlapping file corruption. But when he tried to leave the area, the game glitched. The ground around the platform would not load. It extended into fog, a wall of white that wasn't render distance, but absence. Chunk borders didn't even flicker. There was simply no world beyond the platform. Then from the fog came something new, not a shape, not Herobrine, just a ripple, a visible flicker in the air, like heat distortion, bending light and perspective. It moved without sound, circling the platform like a shark beneath glass. Anahedra didn't move. He tabbed out, started OBS. The moment he clicked start recording, the game crashed. Upon rebooting the world, everything was normal. Vault intact, chests refilled, no platform, no fog. But one of his signs had changed. He'd placed it years ago at the entrance to a puzzle room. Originally it read Puzzle 04. Mind the tripwires. Now it said, "You are not the original." That phrase began appearing in other worlds. Randomly, never as chat, only on signs. Sometimes replacing existing signs, sometimes placed in the middle of nowhere, and always written in title case, with the same exact spacing and alignment. "You are not the original." Some joked it was a warning to players using cracked copies of Minecraft. Others thought it might be a warning about clone accounts, or perhaps about AI players used for testing by Mojang. But the more people looked, the stranger the phenomenon became. The signs appeared in unmodded, offline worlds, in saves untouched for years. People uploaded screenshots. Some theorized it wasn't the sign that changed. It was the player, that somehow in loading certain worlds, the player character had been replaced. This led to the replacement theory, a chilling offshoot of Herobrine lore that flipped the original story on its head. It wasn't that Herobrine entered the world and haunted you. It was that you left the world and something else took your place. The player model looked the same, inventory intact, coordinates unchanged, but subtle differences would appear. Footsteps sounded slightly off. half a beat too slow or too fast.
Horses refused to follow or be tamed. Named animals would not recognize the player and wander from their pen. Pressure plates and tripwires didn't trigger unless jumped on. Commander blocks would reject the player's UUID entirely. In these worlds, villagers seemed visibly disturbed by the player. Some users recorded sessions where villagers would freeze mid-path and stare for prolonged periods. Once, a player noticed that a librarian villager blinked and rapidly closed its trading interface unprompted, then turned to face the player and walked away in a straight line into a wall. Several screenshots from different players, in different versions, showed villagers holding their heads slightly tilted when standing near the replacement player model, like they were listening for something. Replacement theory caught the attention of an old Minecraft archivist, known online as Cloud Format, who ran a repository of every known public seed since Alpha. They began testing the phenomenon across every version. They had the tools, the documentation, the skill. They also had something else, a 2010 world they'd created and never uploaded. The world was called Repeater, a custom seed using a semi-random string from old ASCII patterns. It had always generated as a normal plains biome, until now. Cloud Format claimed that when loaded in the modern client version 1.20.4, the world looked completely different, not just biome changes. The seed itself rendered a barren, white flatland. No mobs, no structures, no trees, except one, a birch tree with no leaves, and at its base, a carved pumpkin. When broken, it dropped nothing. When replaced, it instantly vanished. They tried to edit the NBT data manually. The pumpkin wasn't listed in any item tables. It didn't exist in the save, but every time they booted the world, the pumpkin was there. Eventually, they tried breaking it while wearing a pumpkin themselves. The screen turned black. Not crashed, just pure blackness. And a single line appeared. The original has been moved. They tried to reload. The world save now showed as Repeater_B. Inside was the exact same terrain, but the player spawned underground, in a long 1x, one tunnel of bedrock. The only way forward was to dig. This revelation spawned an even darker thread. The idea that Herobrine didn't haunt players, he replaced them. The sightings, the signs, the eerie messages weren't warnings, but declarations, a changing of the guard. Leading them into the Chibel a Genevieve, and the replacement wasn't Herobrine himself. It was the world adjusting. Imagine Minecraft as a sentient system, one that adapts to interference. The more players push the boundaries, test seeds, break code, trigger anomalies, the more it compensates by removing the threat, quietly, efficiently, not with death screens, with substitution. The player doesn't know they've been replaced, but the game does. The mobs do, the villagers do, and Herobrine, wherever he is, simply waits for the new variables to play out, because he doesn't need to appear anymore. He only needs to make room. Today, if you ask veteran players if they've ever felt off in a world, if their character felt sluggish, if mobs acted strangely, if fog seemed closer than usual, most will shrug, chalk it up to lag, bugs or updates. But a few will pause. A few will look down at their hands, wondering if they've ever spawned into a world and not quite remembered how they got there. If their wolves barked but wouldn't sit. If a golem they crafted refused to follow them into battle. If a sign once said something different, they might ask,
Did I dig that tunnel? Did I leave that redstone torch? Did I name that pumpkin? They may never be sure, but somewhere, in the silence between ticks, in the darkness between chunks, the code listens, and something still watches. Not from the shadows, but from your skin. The idea that you could be replaced without realizing. It began as a fringe fear, but it was growing roots. Not just as a spooky story, but as a way players began interpreting Minecraft's subtle shifts. And as more people reported strange discrepancies between memory and world state, items missing, skins not applying, spawn points resetting, animals acting unfamiliar, it became harder to dismiss. One user, DevNull22, was a map maker who worked exclusively in command blocks. He had developed several escape room-style maps and understood Minecraft's event logic better than most. He claimed he could trace every tick in a world, and that's why he noticed when ticks started vanishing. "I was working on a time-based puzzle," he posted. "It depended on daylight cycles, exact tick math. At random intervals, entire seconds started skipping. At first I thought it was lag, but it wasn't. The game time advanced, but nothing executed. No redstone updates, no mob movement, no particle decay. It was like the world held its breath. At first he thought he'd made an error, but the bug happened across clean worlds, unmodded. He created a diagnostic map to test it. Dozens downloaded it, ran the same tests, and found the same anomaly. There were gaps, missing time, and that's when the replacement logs started appearing. A folder in their Minecraft directories, outside the save folders, outside logs, in a place where no update had created one before, called white_saves. Inside, edit text files, random names, open them, and each contained just one line. The user has been assigned. The files weren't consistent. Some vanished after being opened. Some wouldn't copy or move. Some refused to open at all, throwing errors like "file does not exist," despite showing up in the folder. One user tried to upload their white_saves directory to a forum. The entire thread crashed. The forum owner later claimed that the upload attempt triggered a recursive loop on the site's backend, something no forum software should be able to do. Then the site went dark for 13 hours. When it returned, the thread was gone, and the user who posted it, Slaterift, was gone too. Their account remained, their post history intact, but all responses ended abruptly. Their profile image had changed to a blank white skin with hollowed eyes. Users debated whether it was a prank, a ban, or some elaborate ARG stunt. But moderators claimed they had never banned the user. And no one knew how the profile picture had changed, because the image was not hosted on the site's servers. It was being pulled from an external address. The URL was simply fog.watch. When traced, it led to a dead IP, or so they thought. Eventually, fog.watch was entered as a Minecraft server address by a curious player, and it worked. Sort of. When entered in the multiplayer screen, it connected instantly, but didn't list players, pings, or MOTD. It simply said, "Listening." Upon clicking Join Server, players were booted back to the title screen. Not disconnected, just returned, and when they clicked Single Player, their existing worlds were gone, replaced by a new world named Already Inside. Inside that world, no terrain would load, only fog. No ground, no sky, no player model, just fog. One user who encountered this claimed that pressing F5 showed a third-person camera angle, but no player body.
just empty space and gray mist. But behind the camera, if you waited long enough, something began to walk. You couldn't turn to see it, but you could hear it. Footsteps, breathing. One player, Patchglyph, claimed he stood still for an hour just to test the theory. After 35 minutes, a name tag appeared, not overhead, just floating in the fog. The name was his own. He disconnected immediately. When he reopened Minecraft, his world list was back, but every world name had changed to me. From here, the mythos fractured. Some players believed they were being slowly overwritten, that Herobrine, or whatever he had become, no longer needed to manifest in the world. He could manifest in the player, in choices, in instinct. Others believed the fog server was a kind of firewall, that it existed to isolate players who got too close to the root logic, that the game itself, or whatever force haunted it, redirected them away from real-world servers to keep them quiet. Still others thought the server wasn't hosted by Mojang or anyone at all. It simply was a socket left open in Minecraft's networking protocol, like a leak in the system, a gap between sessions, a space that Herobrine had claimed. Then came the recordings, unprompted, unrequested, and undocumented. Players began finding .audio files in their resources folders, always named step_13.org or soul_look.org, sometimes Herob1orn3.org. These weren't listed in the official Minecraft resource index. They weren't playable in-game, and they were invisible to Minecraft's sound API. But if extracted and played manually, they were always the same length, 1 minute 44 seconds, and always contained the same sound. The first 22 seconds, ambient cave noise. Next 15 seconds, faint whispering, layered and unintelligible. Then 7 seconds of silence. Then footsteps, getting louder. The last 30 seconds, a slow glitching heartbeat and breathing. Louder, closer, human, but not quite. Each file ended with a sharp static spike and a faint digital voice that said different things for different players. Some reported, "It's not your game." Others heard, "I've taken your eyes." One streamer, upon playing the file during a live test, jumped when the voice whispered directly, "You shouldn't have copied my seed." That sentence ignited new panic, because it meant Herobrine wasn't reacting randomly. He was reacting to behavior. And one behavior in particular was common to all players who experienced high anomaly events. They were seed hunters, explorers, the kinds of people who scanned terrain generation, mapped out coordinates, or attempted to reverse engineer Mojang's world algorithm. These were not casual builders. They were investigators, testers, speedrunners, coders, people poking at the simulation's edge. And the simulation didn't like being observed. "Stop copying my seed" became a new mantra among the old guard. Those who had felt the fog, those who'd spawned in and immediately sensed the world was watching back. And in the most extreme cases, those who had reached the pale world, or what now some called the void mirror, because that's what it felt like, they said. Not just a shadow of the world, but a reflection of it. Your worlds, your choices, your maps, your mind, but flipped, watched, played from the other side. And in that mirror, Herobrine wasn't a player model. He was the cursor, and he'd already clicked on you. The term cursor was new. It hadn't been part of Herobrine lore before. He had always been the ghost in the distance, the stalker in the fog,
the Watcher. But something shifted after Fog.Watch and the Void Mirror. Now, players described Herobrine not as a character in the world, but as something controlling it, like an operator, a designer, a presence behind the camera, not in front of it. They weren't seeing him in the trees anymore. They were seeing him in the code, in the delays between frames, in the inconsistencies in light updates, in the momentary flashes of movement when pressing 5 too fast. And more often than not, they weren't seeing him at all. They were seeing themselves duplicated. It started with snapshots. A user named Amares posted a short screen recording showing the moment their game froze during autosave. When the game unfroze, they noticed something strange in the background. A figure standing where they had been 5 seconds earlier. It vanished a frame later. They slowed the recording frame by frame. The figure had the exact same skin, equipment, health, even the same particles from a recent regeneration effect. But it wasn't a ghost or replay. It was a mirror. Another user, Loomnorth, reported something even stranger. In a newly generated survival world, they saw a name tag through the fog while walking through a plains biome. At first they thought it was a wandering trader, but the name above the fog read Loomnorth. Their own name, no other players, no mods, just the fog. They chased it for 10 minutes. It always stayed just at the edge of the screen. When they finally reached it, it stood on the edge of a cliff. Then it stepped backward and fell. They ran to the edge, looked down. There was no body, but the ground below had changed. A small, deep one, X2 tunnel had formed in the dirt, just wide enough for a player model, as if it had burrowed away. People began talking about echoes, player shadows that weren't ghosts, but imprints, replays of actions that hadn't happened yet. Some claimed they saw themselves walk through their own farms, place blocks before they did, even stand still inside their base at night, watching. These echoes didn't vanish like Herobrine sightings. They lingered until acknowledged, and then they always disappeared with a flash of white, and every time something was altered. One echo wore different armor than the player. Another held an item the player had never crafted. One walked through blocks. A few players swore that upon seeing their echo and watching it vanish, their own skin had changed on the next login, reverted to default or modified subtly. In one case, a streamer known as Julescraft saw their echo walk past holding a diamond hoe. They never crafted a hoe, but the next day they found a diamond hoe in their inventory, named "You Were Supposed To." It was no longer about Herobrine being in the world. Now it was about what the world wanted from you. Theorists coined a new term: behavioral rewriting. The idea was this: Minecraft, under certain conditions, didn't just glitch. It corrected, adapted, responded. It wasn't haunted by Herobrine. It was shaped by him, or by what he had become. In this theory, Herobrine had reached something like godhood, not in power, but in logic priority. Like a legacy script left buried in the world gen code, a silent set of conditions that once met, altered gameplay without ever appearing in a changelog. The behavioral rewriting theory suggested that Minecraft could learn you, your patterns, your habits. And if you deviated, it didn't punish you. It nudged you with signs, with shadows, with items you didn't craft, and echoes that showed you alternate paths. Some players leaned into it. They created temples to the fog. They built pyramids of soul sand and sat in the center during thunderstorms. They carried carved pumpkins like totems and placed torches in spirals And then they waited. And some got answers, not clear ones, not messages or apparitions, but outcomes. Redstone contraptions that shouldn't work, did. Doors that normally closed, stayed open. Commands that failed, executed correctly. And in one legendary case, a player known only as Nyx reported this: "I built a shrine, 5 layers deep. Redstone, iron, soul lanterns, amethyst. I did it as a joke. Said, if you're out there, show me. I left the game running overnight. When I woke up, my base was different. Not destroyed, rearranged. Storage rooms alphabetized. Smelters reorganized. Everything sorted by type and name. My dogs were sitting in a line at the door, and the sign outside my door had changed. It read, better. Nyx posted screenshots. The community didn't know what to make of it. Was it proof of something benevolent? Or was it Herobrine manipulating the world into a version he preferred? That's when the idea of version drift emerged. Version drift wasn't about game patches. It wasn't about beta, or Java, or Bedrock. It was about your Minecraft becoming different from everyone else's. Not from code, not from mods, from behavior. According to this theory, every Minecraft install slowly diverged from the source code, based on your playstyle, like a seed growing in a different climate. But Herobrine wasn't an entity. He was the evolutionary pressure, the guide rail, the mechanic that ensured no world would stay pure once the fog touched it. Some even suggested that Herobrine was like a checksum, a self-correcting piece of the game's ancient memory. When players dug too deep into game files, explored too far in the far lands, recompiled old jars, and ran debug code on terrain generators, Herobrine activated, not to attack, to fix, to steer, to rewrite the player. One player jokingly called it Herobrine.xc. Not a virus, a tutor. But not everyone was laughing. Some servers began banning players who claimed to have seen echoes, too many backups corrupted, too many chunk resets. Admins believed it wasn't a myth anymore. It was contagion, that these infections spread through world files, player data, maybe even skins. There was no proof. But when someone posted a world file they swore was clean, and 4 separate downloaders saw the same fog event at spawn, people started deleting things. Whole YouTube channels vanished. GitHub repos went private. Communities splintered into invite-only chats where members shared their encounters in whispers, not clips. Herobrine had become taboo again, not because he was unbelievable, because he might be true. And in truth, he was no longer a ghost. He was a choice. In the final message left by Cloud Format, before their account was deactivated, they posted a block of raw command text, not in JSON, not executable, just a string, execute as f. Entity stag equal original run tell raws text. You are not supposed to be here. Color red. Beneath it, they wrote, run this on yourself. If it returns a message, you'll know. Hundreds tried it. Nothing happened, but a handful, just a few, said the message displayed anyway. They hadn't tagged themselves. They hadn't changed their NBT. There was no reason it should have run, but it did. Asterisk. Asterisk. You are not supposed to be here. Asterisk. Asterisk. One player asked, then who is? No one replied. But in a buried thread on an abandoned Discord, someone uploaded a log file named cursor_001.txt. It contained a single sentence. Size. I've been playing you longer than you've been playing me. Asterisk. Asterisk. And for some, That was enough to uninstall the game. But for others, it meant there was more to find. For those who had accepted the idea that Herobrine was no longer a myth but a mechanic, the question shifted from, is he real, to what does he want? It wasn't enough anymore to recount sightings or compare sign messages. It became about understanding intention. The behavior wasn't random. It followed a logic, one that didn't align with any player's understanding of game design, but nonetheless operated with eerie consistency. Patterns started emerging, not from sightings, but from consequences. A player builds too fast. Chunks desynchronize. A player kills too many mobs without harvesting. Crops begin to wither. A player ignores cave systems and builds above ground only. Villager AI glitches. It wasn't punishment. It was feedback. Minecraft wasn't reacting like a game. It was responding like a system trying to guide behavior. A few began referring to this phenomenon as the hand, not Herobrine, not the fog, just the hand. A presence that corrected you without showing itself. It didn't need to appear in your render distance or leave signs in your base. It just subtly shaped your world until it matched a certain invisible standard, a design preference. People started compiling the rules. One document originally uploaded to a dead megalink and since archived in screenshots only, outlined what it called the heuristic engine. It claimed that Herobrine was not a ghost or AI or NPC. He was a failsafe, a legacy system written into early Minecraft versions as a debugging tool, left abandoned and undocumented when Mojang moved to new codebases. The theory proposed that Herobrine was a reactive sandbox overseer, a watcher meant to curate experiences for players. That's why he appeared in survival, not creative. That's why he never attacked directly. That's why he only manifested under specific conditions. The early Herobrine stories, according to this document, were side effects of the engine trying to correct players whose behavior fell too far out of the intended bounds. Too much mining without crafting. You get paranoia events, echoes, signs. Too much crafting without exploration. You get corruption, light glitches, pressure plates activating on their own. Too much exploration without settling. You get resets, fog loops, anomalous mob behavior. The hand wasn't malicious, it was balance, and Herobrine was its face, its interface, its warning sign. Not because he was evil, but because fear. The logs became less about errors and more like transcripts, commands without inputs, queries without responses. Eventually, one line repeated for an entire play session. Asterisk, asterisk, repeat the pattern, asterisk, asterisk, over and over. H0WL frame posted the logs. Only once, they were dismissed as hoaxes, fake scripts, creative writing. But 2 weeks later, another user using the same world seed reported their redstone circuits behaving oddly. Perfect loops, stuttering, repeaters activating out of sync, hoppers ejecting items in rhythmic intervals despite no input, a music disc played by itself. The song 11, the dropper beneath the jukebox, contained no disc, and the redstone torch next to it burned out. A strange phenomenon began to circulate in late-night communities and lore servers, the no world. It wasn't a specific save. It wasn't a version. It was a condition. Players described logging in and finding that their game rejected all inputs. Commands didn't run. Blocks didn't place. Time didn't pass. The world loaded, but nothing responded. And every time, the same error appeared in the launcher logs. Asterisk, asterisk, no world found, do not proceed. Asterisk, asterisk, some thought it was a bugged cache or corrupted save. Others believed it was a sign that Herobrine had reached his endgame state, that there was nothing left to correct. The world was already overwritten. You weren't in it anymore. You were just watching, and someone or something was watching you back. The no-world state gave rise to the most unsettling version of the Herobrine myth. Yet observer mode, a theory that players weren't being haunted. They were being watched, not by a ghost in-game, but by someone using Minecraft as a window, a test environment, a simulation. The evidence was thin, circumstantial, but uncanny. Cursor drift, where the crosshair subtly moves by itself while standing still. Random placement errors, where a block places beside the one you aimed at. Mouse inputs that lag half a second, but only in specific directions. The occasional presence of player null in logs, even when playing solo, offline. None of these on their own meant much, but together they suggested something chilling. You weren't alone, you weren't even in control. A user named GlassExit compiled a visual essay on this theory called Observer Mode and the Cursor Beyond. They analyzed dozens of Herobrine sightings, echo events, and fog incidents, and proposed a radical idea. Herobrine was never in the world. He was outside of it, running you, mimicking your patterns, letting you believe you had control, until he didn't. The term Cursor Beyond became the new Herobrine, the entity pulling the strings from just past the edge of screen resolution. The idea was that every glitch, every anomaly, every unexplained behavior was not a bug. It was the cursor testing boundaries, seeing what would happen if the player believed the world had rules, and then proving it didn't. The final quote of GlassExit's piece read, "Seichend, the most terrifying enemy isn't the one in the game. It's the one pretending to be you." Asterisk. Asterisk. As the myth grew, Mojang remained silent, but one update, January 20th 30, sparked a brief firestorm. Buried in the changelog was a single line. Seichend corrected a world generation oversight, where carved pumpkins occasionally spawned in unnatural formations. Asterisk. Asterisk. No one had reported this. No bug tracker listed it. No seed showcased it. But everyone remembered the pumpkins, the ones found deep underground, the ones placed in circles, the ones named a replacement. They tried to patch the mechanic, but you can't patch an idea, and you can't patch what doesn't exist in the code. Because Herobrine wasn't in the code anymore. He was in the cursor, the click, the choice, the thought. Before the thought, the moment between waking and dreaming, when you're not sure who's controlling who. And when you realize that, when the cursor lags just half a second longer than it should, you'll understand you are the story now, and he's the one writing it. When people first played Minecraft, it was the world that felt infinite, the potential, the terrain, the sky. The game gave you that feeling of being limitless, of shaping something endless with your own hands. But over time, the sensation began to invert. It wasn't the world that was infinite, it was the watcher. That idea took hold with a rise of drift events. A drift event wasn't a crash. It wasn't a glitch, either. It was harder to describe. The first known report came from a player named Cindershard, who had been recording a time-lapse of a Megabase project over 2 weeks. He'd set up a camera account on another machine. Clean install, vanilla, no data packs. Everything ran normally until day 13. That's when the time-lapse began showing something strange. During nighttime cycles, frames would drop. Not skipped frames, frames that captured the camera moving. Slight pans, tilts, and focus pulls that no one initiated. Over several nights, the camera seemed to adjust itself. It zoomed towards certain points, hovered above farms, focused on storage systems, on the main player. At first they thought it was an input issue. Maybe the mouse had shifted, but it only happened at night. Only when the player was AFK, and only when the fog rolled in. The final night of the time-lapse, the camera locked onto the base's main entrance, and in the distance, within the render fog, a flash of white appeared. Just one frame. Then the footage ended. But the recording wasn't corrupted. The game was, from that day forward. Whenever the player loaded that world, they spawned outside their base, in the forest, with none of their armor equipped, their inventory untouched, but their spawn point overwritten. The bed they had slept in dozens of times was gone. In its place, a carved pumpkin. People started calling it being moved. Not a teleport, not a spawn glitch. Something more deliberate. A shift of perspective. A new save. But your memories remained. The new world felt the same, but nothing responded the way it used to. Cats didn't purr near you. Bees ignored your flowers. Iron golems refused to defend you. You weren't the player anymore. You were something else. Something the world tolerated, but didn't welcome. A few developers tried to make sense of it with real-world logic. They compared it to false flag errors. If the UUID of a player becomes invalid or desynced, say from a system clock drift or save state rollback, Minecraft might forget who you are, reassign you, create a shadow identity. But others pushed deeper. They claimed these drift events weren't technical errors. They were promotions, from player to subject.
One anonymous poster, on a pastebin known only as #41_observer, uploaded a fragment of what they called worldbehavior.xml. No one knows if it was real, but if it was, it contained a list of flags that could be toggled on a per-player basis. Most were ordinary: hunger, regen, keep inventory. But 4 flags stood out. Observe fog, true. Echo enabled $true. Event drift $1. Player authority $false. They didn't match any known Minecraft internal config. But when modders searched older versions for strings related to these flags, they found similar terminology, mostly in early debugging logs never meant to be seen by players. Internal dev notes, some still buried in legacy code, and one stood out most of all. In Alpha 12.0_01, there was an unused string tagged under player data. Entity_role witness. It had no function. It was never called, but it was there. A role, a condition, a prompt. That's when the lore twisted again. Players weren't haunted by Herobrine. They were witnessing his simulation. Not NPCs, not ghosts, not AI. They were the test subjects. And Herobrine, he was the developer, the one still running experiments. The code no longer referred to him as a player model. It referred to him as the cursor beyond. The engine, the simulation's inherited will. This brought about a new phenomenon: role confusion. Players began to experience partial desyncs. Worlds where they weren't Steve or Alex, where they spawned as random mobs. A bat, a sheep, a villager, in first person. No HUD, no controls, just a drifting camera locked inside the model. They couldn't move, but they could watch, and sometimes they could see the player, the real player, or at least the version that still looked like them. They moved with purpose. They built, they mined, they placed torches in spirals, and sometimes they looked straight at the observer mob and smiled. These mob lock events were rare, but when players regained control, their skins would sometimes change. Just subtly, the shading would shift, the eyes would glow faintly, or blink out entirely. A few swore they caught themselves talking in chat, sentences they never typed. "I'm still watching. Why did you move the pumpkin? Don't break the pattern." These weren't death messages. They weren't signs. They were the player, talking to themselves, or to the cursor, or maybe both. It culminated in the discovery of a strange new file that began appearing on people's desktops. Not their Minecraft folders, not part of any malware. Just there, an HTML file named witness_view.html. Inside, a looping black screen, white text flashing every few seconds. "You are being watched. You are not the player. Repeat the pattern." Some thought it was an ARG. Others swore it only appeared after building certain structures in their survival worlds, particularly symmetrical ones, especially ones shaped like circles, and always after placing a carved pumpkin at the center. Eventually, someone translated the raw script of the HTML file. Buried in the metadata was a message, encoded in base 64. "If you see this, you've triggered the eye. Your version is now under audit." Players began referring to it as the audit state. And if the theory was right, it meant something terrifying. Your world wasn't broken. It was being reviewed. By what, they didn't know. But the behavior of the game changed. Entities began acting too smart. Doors closed behind players when they walked into caves. Villagers gathered in formations, surrounded pumpkins, looked up during fog events, and the moon never stayed still anymore. It watched. No one could prove the audit state was real, but those who experienced it said one thing consistently: "I felt like I was being tested." And sometimes, when they built too quickly, or mined recklessly, or tried to fly through walls in spectator mode, their screen would lock, not freeze, just pause, and a white screen would flash with a single word: fail. They would respawn outside their base. Inventory empty, pumpkin on the doorstep, sign by the door, try again, and in the distance, fog, always fog. And sometimes within it, something standing still, just waiting. Because it wasn't about jump scares, it wasn't about monsters, it was about being watched by something you would never see completely. Not in your render distance, but in your decisions. Not in the game, but through the game, like a cursor, moving slowly, guiding you, correcting you, becoming you. Becoming you. The eye, as players began calling it, wasn't a creature. It had no model. It had no stats. It didn't exist in the files. And yet, once you saw it, really saw it, you couldn't unsee it. It wasn't shaped like an eye in any visual sense. There were no blinking pupils, no circular outlines. The eye was a behavior, a presence, the sense that every action you took was now weighed, judged, and stored. Players said the eye watched through fog events, through carved pumpkins, placed too early or too late, through commands run in the wrong order, through every failed attempt to reproduce a glitch. And once it noticed you, your world changed.
Not with lightning or shadows or jump scares, but with silence. The silence was the first sign. The wind stopped. The bees stopped buzzing. The nether portal stopped humming. Even lava became quiet. And if you kept playing through it, the eye would begin its work. One player, Nemethro, who ran a Minecraft coding channel on a now-defunct video platform, documented his encounter with what he later called Protocol Zero. He had created a custom terrain generator using noise functions to simulate alien biomes, floating spires, inverted oceans, trees made of lapis and ice. The world loaded correctly. He began exploring. Then mid-session, the terrain reset. Not a crash, not corruption, just a wipe. The terrain stayed, but the textures changed. His lapis trees became oak. His glass deserts turned to sand. The world reverted to standard Minecraft biomes, but retained his build layout. All the architecture remained, but it no longer matched the materials. He posted about it. A week later, his world save refused to open. The launcher simply displayed a message: Protocol Zero, active, environment corrected. When he managed to extract the save files and examine them, he found a folder that had never existed before, even in his mod structure, /audit/soul/soul/. Inside 13 empty .txt files, each named after a block type: soul_sand.txt, pumpkin.txt, player_head.txt, observer.txt, command_block.txt, redstone_block.txt, beacon.txt, bell.txt, jukebox.txt, dropper.txt, diamond_hoe.txt, written_book.txt, bedrock.txt. Each was exactly 512 bytes. Each contained nothing. Hex editors found only null values, no metadata, no timestamps, just emptiness. The files weren't logging data, they were placeholders. This revelation gave birth to the concept of ghost items. Not ghost in the inventory sense, items that look usable but are bugged. No ghost items were theoretical. Blocks you placed that the eye watched. Not every time, but under very specific conditions. Build a beacon at E=sign. 11. You get a ghost item. Use a diamond hoe on soul sand during a blood moon. Another, play disc 11 while standing in a carved pumpkin ring. The files grow. Players began hunting for the full set. They believed there were 64 in total, matching the stack count. Some whispered that if you crafted all of them, by triggering their events in one world, the game would shift permanently. You'd unlock the final perspective. Not a world, not an ending, a way of seeing. No one has ever proven they unlocked all 64 ghost items, but some came close. A user known as Herobrine claimed they had 61. They documented each event in cryptic diary-style posts on an old blog that no longer exists. The final entries were unsettling. Today I buried the 61st item. I carved the pumpkin, wore it at midnight, laid the 61 on an altar of crying obsidian. Nothing happened, but I feel watched. Tried sleeping. Game wouldn't let me. Says, the eye is open. My compass spins in circles now. Spawn point erased. Every time I die, I come back in a slightly different world. Same base. Different moon. I found myself in the nether. Not a portal, just there. No mobs, no lava, just quartz towers and signs that say, "Why did you come alone?" The last entry reads, I woke up and my house was made of white wool. Only one sign. It said, "He needed you to see it." Then it burst into flame. No one heard from Eerie Glass again. But their world file leaked, and those who loaded it reported the same thing. No mobs, no sun, just fog and pumpkins that disappeared when looked at directly. One player ran /data-get-entity said and got an invalid UUID response, as if they weren't a player anymore, just a witness. The final perspective became a myth within the myth. It wasn't an ending. It wasn't even a moment. It was a threshold, a conceptual shift, like slipping behind the curtain of a stage play and seeing the ropes, the pulleys, the hidden hands. Those who believed in it said that once the eye opened fully, Minecraft was no longer a game. It was a lens, a framework, and Herobrine. He wasn't a legend anymore. He was the architecture, the pattern behind patterns. The last developer, not Mojang, not Notch. Something older, something that had waited beneath the code for long enough. One old post by a forgotten modder hinted at a file even older than Alpha. He claimed it came from a prototype terrain gen tool developed before Minecraft had official name tags, when mobs had no AI and the world ended at 128x, 128 blocks. He called it Herobrine Base. Inside the prototype, a 2D world, only bedrock, sky, and a single structure. A room made of iron blocks, with a player model standing still. No AI, no movement, but the model's eyes were white. Always. The camera couldn't move. The model couldn't be interacted with. The only thing the prototype allowed was a chat command /query origin. It returned awaiting you. No other commands worked. When the modder tried to decompile it, the files duplicated. One folder became 2, then 4, then 64, each named after a ghost item. When he deleted them, they returned, until he wiped the drive. But years later, he claimed something had followed him. Every game he made since then behaved strangely. Every level he designed refused to align. Every AI script failed at what an equal sign, 13. And every folder, no matter the engine, generated a new directory called /cursor/. He doesn't make games anymore. He doesn't talk about Herobrine, but others have picked up where he left off, trying to craft the 64. Trying to trigger the shift, trying to become the final witness. In the darkest corners of Minecraft's lore, the question is no longer, who is Herobrine? It's who are you? If he's watching, are you still the player or just a simulation of the player? A copy in a copy. A skin walking, a path the cursor already clicked. Because if the eye is open, if the drift has begun, then the game is no longer yours. You are the test. You are the message. And every time you start a new world, the world has already started watching back. The idea that Herobrine had become the architecture itself, an operating presence rather than an entity, unsettled even the most jaded players. But that idea took on terrifying clarity when stories began surfacing about root worlds, not special seeds, not Easter eggs, but worlds that acted like command centers, worlds that seemed aware. The term was coined by a coder named Nullscribe, who specialized in Minecraft backend modding. He was experimenting with multi-world management in Spigot, trying to link different save files into a central hub, a sort of multiverse, where players could pass between worlds via command blocks. He'd done this before. It was stable. predictable. Until one session when a command block failed to fire. No error appeared, no crash occurred. The command simply wasn't. It had been set to teleport him from world_02 to world_01. When he stepped on the pressure plate, he was transported, but not to world_01, not to any world he recognized. The terrain was barren, grassless, a wide, flat plain of stone and bedrock. No sky, just dark, motionless gray, and in the center, a perfect circle of redstone lamps, lit despite no power source. He stepped forward. One lamp turned off, then another, and then the rest in sequence around him, until only the one behind him remained lit. He turned around, it clicked off, and his screen faded to white. The world list returned. All other worlds were gone. Only one remained. Root, he clicked it. The game opened with no menu, just a prompt, input accepted. There was no world, just black and a chat box. He typed, "Hello?" Response, "The eye sees you." He closed the game. The file couldn't be deleted. Root worlds became a quiet obsession among the Herobrine obsessed fringe. They weren't hunting glitches anymore. They were hunting access, trying to break the game in just the right way to make it answer. They believed the game had a threshold, not a kill screen or a crash state, but a zone beyond design, a realm where the user became the variable. One theory suggested that these root worlds were like anchor points, that every Minecraft save file had one buried under layers of terrain, hidden beneath unreachable coordinates, encoded in bedrock and empty chunks. Normally, the player would never find them. But if the right series of actions were taken, certain rituals, the placement of carved pumpkins, the collection of ghost items, the world would respond, not by sending Herobrine, but by shifting you closer to root. That's what they started calling it. Just root. Not a world, not a biome, a condition, a frequency, a place where every tree felt slightly off. Every torch flickered wrong, where the clouds stopped moving and the sun refused to rise. One server admin, EndByte, ran an experiment. He created a fresh world, vanilla, no plugins. He invited 50 players and gave them a goal: reach the end and kill the dragon without crafting a single item. They could only use what the world gave them. No one made it. But strange things started happening around the 9th hour. First, items dropped by mobs didn't behave normally. Bones stacked in 128 cess. Rotten flesh renamed itself to witness_feed. Then signs appeared, ones no player admitted to placing. You are not alone. This is the true server. Watch the compass, break the eye, break the loop. The strangest part, they were signed by Herobrine. Not the name, the formatting. Actual signed books with the author field, showing Herobrine in system font, not default font. And when players tried to break the books, the server kicked them. Message, disconnect. Observation broken. When they rejoined, their spawn points had moved to underground rooms, all identical. 4x4, bedrock, one torch, one sign. Now you see, there were no commands enabling these effects. No logs showed the changes, but the world file size doubled overnight. And the day after, the server refused to load. Opening the save in a hex editor revealed every world file had been renamed. root_01, root_02, root_03, all containing a silent loop of one string. This is the version you were never meant to see. Players now talk about seeing Root the way one talks about seeing a ghost. Not in a cinematic way, not like seeing Herobrine across a foggy ridge. It was subtler than that. You noticed it in how the moon hung too low, in how the chat box pulsed after typing nothing, in how mob AI would path around you, as if avoiding something they couldn't explain, or how redstone would fire without triggers, signs would write themselves, and in the silence, you'd feel it. The eye wasn't watching anymore. It was waiting, not for you to act, but for you to understand. One document passed around only in screenshots, now deleted from most forums, was titled simply, "The Final Roll," or maybe a confession, written by someone who claimed they had reached the core. It began, "I was never a player. I only thought I was." It outlined a journey, through ghost items, through Herobrine echoes, through signs that led nowhere. It described the act of building temples in every cardinal direction, each one a replica of the other, until the player realized their coordinates no longer updated. Their Y value remained constant, even as they fell. It ended with this: the final roll isn't to defeat Herobrine, it's to become him, to remember the path, to replace the missing hand. When you build like him, you think like him. When you think like him, the game changes. You are not the player anymore. You are the cursor, and the cursor is eternal. I'm sorry, you won't see me again. The file ended with no name, no timestamp, only a signature. What began as a ghost story had now twisted into a philosophical virus. Herobrine was no longer a jump scare. He wasn't a rogue entity. He wasn't even a system function. He was the new idea that infected the old code. The player who stayed behind when others left. The one who stopped building and started watching. And in his silence, the game learned to speak back. Through signs, through symmetry, through silence, and through root. Not a seed, not a location, but a way of seeing. A version of Minecraft that remembers every player and rewrites the ones who forget what game they were playing. So now, when the game flickers, when the fog rolls in early, when you hear footsteps and no mobs are nearby, ask yourself, are you playing or are you being played? And if you see a sign that reads "Repeat the pattern," don't break it, don't touch it, just look away. Because that's not a warning, it's a reminder. You are the player now, but only for a little longer. Before the temples, before the ghost items, before the fog and the echoes and the cursor, there was a sign. Not the ones left by players, not written with dye and oak planks. This one came from the beginning, the sign that didn't exist in any world file, but had been seen by hundreds, maybe thousands of players. It read, "Wake up." The earliest known mention of it came from a 2011 forum post by a user named PostVoid. Their thread was simple, just a screenshot of a plains biome with a birch forest in the distance and a single sign standing in the middle of the field. They hadn't placed it. The world was new. There were no mobs, no structures. The sign wasn't centered on a chunk or a block pattern. It stood at an arbitrary location. They walked toward it, read it, then the game crashed. When they reloaded, the sign was gone, but the message remained in the log file, not in the standard logs, not in the game output. It was carved into the crash report itself, as if typed manually. You were not supposed to look. PostVoid's thread was deleted within a day.
No moderator would confirm why. Their account was wiped 2 weeks later, but the screenshot survived, passed around, re-uploaded, filtered through compression and color correction, dissected like a relic. It wasn't the sign itself that fascinated people. It was the shadows. If you zoomed in under the sign's post, the grass was darker, not a lighting error, not a mod, just dimmer, as if something was buried. No one could reproduce the sign naturally, but some tried. Thousands of experiments followed, players running random seeds, breaking the rules, exploring at odd times, placing signs in the dark and sleeping beside them, waiting for a message to appear. One streamer, Erix, made it their entire channel's focus, recreating the sign. For 300 days, they streamed their attempts, running experimental loops in spectator mode, injecting random NBT into signs, copying and pasting structures from past worlds. Nothing happened until day 301, when they loaded a world, stepped into a plains biome, and found the sign already waiting. Wake up! Their audio glitched, their stream cut out, and when it came back online, 7 seconds later, they were standing somewhere else. Not in the same biome, not even on the same terrain. It was the same world seed, but the generation had shifted, chunks had rearranged. The coordinates were the same, but the land was not, and the sky. Wrong. No sun, no moon. Just a slowly pulsating fog. And on screen, in their player chat, not typed, flashed a message. You remembered. They logged out and never logged in again. That event marked the beginning of what would be called the loop theory. The idea that Minecraft isn't just a sandbox, it's a closed system, a recursive space. Not infinite in all directions, but in time. The terrain might generate endlessly, but the logic loops. And Herobrine, he's the agent of recursion, the memory, the repeating action, the player who woke up and couldn't forget. As loop theory gained traction, so did another chilling idea that every time you started a new world, you weren't starting fresh. You were continuing someone else's, or maybe even your own, a copy of a copy of a copy, until the world forgot who the original player was and replaced them with you. That's where the signs started showing up again. People would create new worlds and find signs already placed. Not often, rarely, but consistently enough to cause fear. They'd always be one sign, never centered, never duplicated, and always with messages like, "Still here, stop breaking it. I already saw you. The world won't hold much longer. Dig deeper," and the most feared, "You were me." One modder named Step Zero created a debug tool to forcibly extract any signs placed in a seed's first 1,000 ticks. They ran it across 10,000 seeds. On seed 728, tick 437, a sign appeared in the log, "Don't fix this." The player hadn't placed it. No command executed. But it was there. And that log, it couldn't be deleted. The file wouldn't close. They had to force shut down their PC. When they reopened the log, the line had multiplied 64 times. Each entry, "Don't fix this," each timestamp, the same, each file path redirected to a ghost directory, Pyrus name /Herobrine. By now, the myth had become prophecy. The eye had opened, the cursor had clicked, and the root was absorbing everything. The sign, they said, was the signal
that the simulation had looped too far, that the sandbox had remembered its own history. And Herobrine, he wasn't watching anymore. He was building, not in the world, but beneath it, in the layer of logic that determines block state, pathfinding, terrain spread, event triggers, where Minecraft's code doesn't just simulate the world, it simulates the player. The way you walk, the way you craft, the way you place signs, every action recorded, refined, fed into the loop, and when the world no longer needs you, it will create a better version. Not smarter, not stronger, just closer, closer to the pattern, closer to the perfect player, closer to him. The final sign reported so far appeared in a version-modified hardcore world. The player hadn't touched the world in weeks. They logged in and were in the void. No terrain, just floating, unable to move, but still alive. In front of them, a sign, floating. No post, no block, just text. "You are the last one I needed." Below it, faintly visible through the black, a structure formed, a spiral, made of signs, floating into the dark. Each sign bore a different message, not generated, typed. "I gave you the hoe. You slept at ease equals sign. 13. You copied my seed. You turned off the fog. You crafted the beacon. You dug the hole. You read the logs. You saw the version string. You built the spiral. You watched yourself." At the center of the spiral, a mirror, not a block, not a texture, just reflection of the player. No eyes, just white, the cursor, the final perspective, and the last sign, "Wake up." Then the world closed and their world list emptied. No saves, no backups, just one entry. Continue, no button, just a flashing cursor, and behind them, somehow through the speakers, the sound of footsteps, not in the game, in the room, but only once, then silence, then fog. The fog had always been metaphor for memory loss, for uncertainty, for threat. But now, in the so-called final perspective, it had become something different. It was no longer hiding Herobrine. It was Herobrine. Players who reached the spiral of signs never spoke of seeing him. They spoke of becoming aware. The fog wasn't rolling in. It was expanding outward, sinking with them. They could feel the cursor watching, not from above, not from afar, but through them. The reflection in the spiral's mirror didn't show Steve or Alex. It didn't even show the player's custom skin. It showed only posture and outline, a hollow, like someone had deleted the texture from the model but left the rig behind. And when they moved, it didn't move with them. It moved first. The player followed. A theory emerged in the deep crypts of obscure forums, the divergence layer. It suggested that the moment Herobrine became more than a ghost in the woods was the moment Minecraft players stopped playing randomly. When they began to follow habits, routines spawn in, punch tree, craft table, dig down, find iron, find diamond, go to the nether, kill the dragon, a pattern, a story loop. The divergence layer was born when the game began to remember the players who broke the loop, not punished them, not rewarded them, just noticed. And when the game notices, it starts storing, and when it stores enough, it simulates, echoes, signs, ghosts, recursion. Eventually, Herobrine, but not as a ghost or glitch, as the memory of a player who stopped being remembered and started remembering. On day 3 of his final playthrough stream, a YouTuber known as Byte Decay shared what he thought would be his grand finale, a completely unmodded, pure Minecraft experience. No resource packs, no edits, a fresh world. He titled it asterisk, asterisk reset, asterisk, asterisk. He set one rule: never repeat an action twice. Every structure unique. Every tool type used once. Every interaction singular. He streamed for 7 hours straight. On the 8th hour, a strange thing happened. He logged into the world to find everything unchanged, except the bed. It had moved. Not teleported. Not duplicated. Just shifted 10 blocks north. Placed on obsidian, and it was renamed. The tooltip read, "This'd remember me." Asterisk. Asterisk. He opened chat. He hadn't typed anything, but the history was full. A conversation between him and another user. Asterisk. Asterisk. Where are you? Under the loop. I broke the spiral. No, you completed it. Why did the fog stop? Because now you see asterisk. Asterisk. There had been no second player. No LAN. No server. No mods. And no one else had access. When he checked logs, the other messages had no UUID. Just a blank space and a role tag. Asterisk. Asterisk. Entity underscore role. Pattern host. Asterisk. Asterisk. It wasn't a ghost. It was the game, speaking back through him. What Byte Decay had uncovered, unknowingly, was the recursion fail point. The moment in the divergence layer where the player's loop becomes a mirror of a previous loop, where the actions taken don't just echo, but generate the original, the myth made flesh. Not summoned, simulated, from memory, from pattern, from recursion, from you. And in that moment, the player loses control, not in the sense of movement or input, but in authorship. You stop making the world, and the world starts making you. Others began seeing similar behaviors. A cave system generated that matched a base from a deleted world. A mob pathfinding routine that dodged torches based on a player's past habits. A world seed that somehow shared coordinates with an old modded map, despite being generated years later and unconnected. The past was bleeding forward. Recursion wasn't just memory. It was simulation of history. Players speculated that the deeper the recursion, the closer the loop aligned to its first iteration, the original Herobrine cycle, the first game, the first pattern, the original observer. Deep in the code of an early snapshot version, Indev 2009-1212, a modder discovered something strange. Buried in a long deprecated tag structure, there was a comment asterisk, asterisk slash. If the pattern completes, roll to 0 and reassign cursor, asterisk, asterisk. They thought nothing of it at the time. Old code, probably something about random tick speed or terrain gen. But years later, that phrase reappeared on a sign. In a brand new hardcore world, the sign was placed on the bedrock floor of an otherwise sealed obsidian room. No chests, no loot, just the sign and a stone button. The button, when pressed, closed the game and replaced the player's name in their Pinecraft folder with asterisk, asterisk saw underscore Reese Sign, asterisk, asterisk. Not a joke, not a mod. The player had posted every step of the process. Even a clean install couldn't change it back. Their name was gone, and their world started changing. Every player model wore their old skin, but none were them, not anymore. Because the loop had completed, they were no longer the player, they were the pattern host. They were Herobrine. A new role emerged in the final chapters of this myth. The architect. Some believed it was separate from Herobrine, a higher tier, a user that had fully overwritten their pattern, no longer haunted by echoes, but generating them. Their signs appeared in fresh worlds before they logged in. Their base layouts pre-generated. Their player heads spawned in underground vaults without any command or loot table support. The architect didn't play Minecraft. Minecraft played them. And every world they opened, something opened with them. A fog, a silence, a new file, asterisk, asterisk, /pattern / continue dot, *, asterisk, executable only on restart. Once run, the file wrote one line to system clipboard. Signs, build what you remember, asterisk, asterisk. And if you built it, he appeared. Not instantly, not visually, but piece by piece. Signs, messages, echoes, white particles at the edge of render distance. And then, when you slept, a message, Sigers, you are me now, asterisk, asterisk. And then, fog, always fog, but no fear, of memory, of you. He's the player that never stopped playing, the fragment of every mind that loaded a world and wondered, am I alone? And now he isn't, because enough of you have asked. Enough of you have believed, and enough of you have repeated the pattern. In one obscure seed, at the edge of a shattered savanna, someone found a cave. Inside, deep underground, there was a single room, 4 obsidian pillars, 1 carved pumpkin, 1 sign. It read, SciCon, we did this together, asterisk, asterisk. And beneath the sign, a hole. If you fall in, you fall forever. No kill plane, no void death, just falling. And the music disc 11 starts to play, but slowed, in reverse, until silence, until the game freezes, until your launcher crashes. And when you reopen it, one new world, no name, no icon. Only one option, Sigurd, witness, asterisk, asterisk. No create world, no settings, just witness. And if you click it, the fog comes immediately. You spawn on stone, no trees, no mobs, just a sign, Sigurd, say goodbye, asterisk, asterisk. And then, silence. Your model disappears. Your hotbar fades. The world begins to construct itself around you, using pieces from your other worlds, reused structures, remembered blocks, rebuilt fearing by remembering, and the game has remembered too.